Okay. Calling to order the Cuyahoga County Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, December the 6th, 2016. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Calling the roll, Ms. Conwell. Ms. Conwell?
Here, sorry.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Ms. Brown?
Here.
Mr. Hairston? Here. Ms. Simon? Ms. Simon is absent at the moment. Mr. Greenspan? Mr. Miller? Mr. Germana? Mr. Gallagher? Mr. Schron? Mr. Schron is absent at the moment. There's a quorum.
Thank you. Is there any public comment related to the agenda?
Mr. President, I have none.
All right. Well, at this time, I'm going to turn over the gavel to the chairman of the council's finance committee, David Greenspan, for one of his last stands.
All right, well, thank you for that introduction, Mr. President. I usually don't do this. I'll take a point of personal privilege. My son today just signed his commitment papers to being an officer in the United States Air Force, so I want to congratulate him on that accomplishment. On the agenda, we have two items referred to committee. If the clerk will please read the first item.
Resolution number 2016-0216, adopting the 2016-2017 biennial operating budget and capital improvements program annual update for 2017.
Great, thank you. The administration submitted to council a resolution to amend the current biennial operating budget to which we are operating under. And there are a few discussion points that were going to be heard today. Thank you. The expectation of today's meeting is to do as we have done in the past, is to qualify, review, and verify the information presented in the resolution. We do not anticipate taking any votes today. We will, however, have a committee of the whole meeting next Tuesday, the 13th, at which time we'll consider any resolutions or amendments to resolutions that have been presented to council. As we start today, I just want to, we have a predefined order in which we're going to hear presenters. All the presenters have been given the order in which they are going to address council. But before we start the actual presentation as it relates to the resolution, Mr. Denahan from the Adams Board has requested an opportunity to speak to council, and we have allotted 10 minutes for his presentation. So I'll call Mr. Denahan to the podium, please.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity to speak to you, to the council, to the council chair and of this committee and the council president. Thank you for this opportunity. I know that I don't need to stand in front of you and tell you that we are truly experiencing the devastating effects of heroin addiction and fentanyl in our county. This has gone beyond an epidemic. In our area, I call it a tsunami. 2014, we lost 224 people in our county. 2015, 228. So far in this year, we lost 446 in the first part of November, and it's anticipated that we will exceed more than 500 people die by the end of this year. This is everyone's story. It's equally split between the counties, suburbs, and the city. And that does not just end in Cuyahoga County. Each day, Ohioans continue to die to unintentional drug overdoses, which on an annual basis is higher than the average annual deaths of car accidents and homicides. And according to a new study by the Henry Kaiser Family Foundation, Ohio leads the United States in opiate overdose deaths, with one out of 9 heroin deaths across the USA happening in Ohio, surpasses states much larger populations such as California and New York. And that's not by per capita, that's by total numbers. Again, Ohio had 2,106 deaths in 2014, accounting for 7.5% of the total 28,647 deaths nationwide. California had 2024. New York was third with 1,739. Cuyahoga County accounted for 10% of the total deaths in Ohio. Our trouble continues in 2014, where we saw an increase, 2015, where we saw an increase of 45% to 3,050 deaths. Now remember, Ohio was ruled number one in America with 2,106 deaths in 2014. In 2015, Ohio had 3,050 deaths in that year. This year, we will increase to more than 500. That is approximately a 95% increase in deaths from 2015. And had it not before the Dawn program, naloxone will have claimed at least 200 lives this year, which we would see more than 700 people this year overdose, of which over 500 are dying. The Adams Board of Cuyahoga County has been working with our partners to try to put a stop to the tsunami, which has impacted our budget. We have invested resources that, thanks to this council, you approved for us to spend for treatment to mental illness and addiction. We did that to expand residential treatment and recovery and sober housing to support the Dawn program. We've increased the number of residential treatment beds by 34 since 2014, and from 59 to now available 93. That's a 57% in the total number of beds, 66% in funding, an additional $2 million invested for a total of $5.1 million. Since we know that from our recovery advocates that a safe, sober living environment is crucial to maintaining recovery, we have developed a sober and recovery housing program that now has 161 beds. We had no beds of sober in 2014 and 52 in 2015, and we had 106 this year. So we now have 161 available beds, sober beds in this year. That's an investment of $1 million in sober recovery beds. This is a 186% increase that we budgeted in 2017. But that's not enough. We still have waiting lists for detox services that can be as long as 2 to 3 weeks, with 35 to 40 people waiting for people to get in for a detox and to get a bed. We get these waiting lists every Monday, and it hasn't changed in the last 6 months. We're still looking at other ways to increase our detox and treatment beds, and hopefully we can announce that within the next month or so. At this point in time, I respectfully request that Cuyahoga County Council consider passing a resolution that requests that the state and federal government to declare a state and public health emergency with the appropriation of additional fiscal resources to address the deadly tsunami. The Adams Board passed a resolution making this request on November 30th. We also recently launched a new heroin campaign, which began in October, that targeted radio messages, outdoor advertising on billboards, RTA buses, and neighborhood kiosks, and other targeted social media. We've also been engaged the community through addiction recovery advocacy meetings to share ideas stimulating from families who have lost a loved one. They have two things in common. They're still grieving, and they don't want to happen to them to happen to somebody else. The two meetings have said very clear that we need to do more on education, prevention, and training, and to get beds, and to get beds. So we're asking, we're taking these suggestions and developing the meetings, and we will continue that with our strategic plan that we're working on this week and next week. So we respectfully ask that you pass a resolution, and I have a copy of a resolution that we passed from the Adams Board that I could share with you if you wish. Could you? I'd be able to answer any questions at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Are there any questions for the director? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Denahan.
Appreciate it.
Okay, I'll refer my colleagues to the information they have before you. Staff has prepared a packet, which is in your budget briefing manual, and in there is an agenda as well as the material that you'll be hearing today, as well as additional materials that have been provided. We're going to start today with Chief of Staff Sharon Sobel Jordan, which will provide an overview to the new initiatives outlined and the policies outlined in the resolution and the policies supporting those positions. And we'll also hear during her time from Chief Bova and Director Public Works, Michael Dever. And then we'll move through and hear from Maggie Keenan and Dennis Kennedy on the overall presentation of the recommended budget. Then we'll move into the departmental recommendations that are listed in your book. So I'd ask you to follow through with the book as well as the additional materials that have been provided. So we'll turn over to the Chief of Staff, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of Council, I appreciate this opportunity to address you today. I did want to give just a little bit of context, as the Chairman said, to the requests that we've made. And I wanted to start with talking about last year, because last year we worked together to create a budget that I think we were all very proud of. We worked very hard on that budget. It preserved essential services and operations, but also was very strategic and moved this county forward. And that was done under very difficult circumstances, and it also was the result of very difficult decisions that we made together. But in the end, we also decided that even in tough times, where we have to really think about now how we drive results and how we get things done today, we also have to think about the future and how we invest and how we're going forward. Now we're here to propose some mid-budget revisions for 2017. And we appreciate that you've provided this opportunity to make revisions in the middle of a budget cycle, because the budget, as we all know, is a fixed plan that you have to work in an ever-changing world. And the mid-budget revision process is critical to all of our ability to deliver results and provide superior services to the people of Cotw County. We are proposing mid-budget revisions primarily to align resources to all of our expectations. A few of our top team members did not begin at the county until after the budget was passed, so they are working budgets that they did not actually have a hand in designing. But more importantly, we all have high standards and a sense of urgency about the work that we are asking them to do. We've developed bold strategies. They're sound strategies, but they are really have this sense of urgency in them and to move this county forward. Our directors know what they need to deliver, and they are asking for adjustments to align the resources to our expectations. And I'm here because the county executive supports them in these requests. So these requests are really grouped in, they're really made to support two shared goals that we have. And I want to talk to you about each one of those. So the first goal is to do better at taking care of our team members and showing them that we value their service. And we've spent a lot of time as a leadership team really focusing on where we're trying to take this county and what we have to get right to get there. And we start with the fact always, first and foremost, that we are a service organization and our profession is public service. So our success is measured by the quality of our customer experience and the effectiveness of our services. And our ability to deliver superior service depends on the ownership, engagement, performance, and innovation of our over 6,000 county staff team members. Our Chief Talent Officer and HR Director, Douglas Dykes, was appointed to take our efforts to the next level. As a result, there are many investments that we are making now and others that we will be working with you in the many years ahead to make. I want to be clear that these are strategic investments that we must make, all in the context of our limited resources, but also keeping in mind the return on these investments, because the benefits we will receive in the future by investing in our staff are really more valuable than we probably can quantify today. But there are a few that we felt we could not wait for until the next budget process in 2018. So there are two requests today, one in HR and one in communications, that we are putting forward so that we can make them now. Douglas Dykes will talk with you about the investments in HR. This is the main request that we are making today, and it's an investment in training, performance management, and employee recognition, which all play a key role in our overall staff performance, but also in customer satisfaction. A large portion will go to training and leadership development for our supervisors. This is really very important to us. They are increasingly being called upon not only to be operational leaders, but to be strategic leaders, and we need to support them in that effort. Also, we all know research shows that employees stay or leave a job primarily by the relationship they have with their immediate supervisor. So strengthening our immediate supervisors, their skills, their engagement, their ability to create relationships with their staff teams is really critically important to our success. Douglas has a plan to continuously improve the skills in order to create a more positive experience for our entire staff team and ultimately for our customers. And we really don't feel this can wait one more year. You also will hear from our Chief Communications Officer, Eliza Wing, about another improvement we'd like to make for our staff, and this is an investment in better communications. We hear this all the time from our staff, that they don't feel connected and they don't have the information they need to deliver a superior product to our customers. So Eliza has a plan to beef up our internal communications, both our policies and our strategy, and she'll talk to you about how this feeds into our overall communication strategy for 2017. Again, we feel this is so critical that we didn't want to wait another year to get it going. The second of these goals that the request support is to enhance our region's economic competitiveness. The charter begins with a clear mandate to significantly improve the economic competitiveness of this region, and it makes job growth and economic growth, job creation and economic growth a fundamental governmental purpose. The challenge has been to restructure county government and reallocate resources to support this mandate. Now, great strides were made during the first term, but as we all know, there's much work left to be done. Chief Economic Development Director Ted Carter joined our team in late January, and he is charged with leading this effort for all of us. Ted has brought new energy and experience to this challenge and to our overall economic development strategy. He has been proactive in searching out development opportunities for our county. He is engaging business leaders in this county and looking at the future of our region. He is also looking at ways that we can tighten our controls, particularly in our loan servicing and the other fundamental services that they provide in economic development. Ted will talk to you today about adjustments we believe he needs to get the job done. Again, we don't feel these can wait another year. Now, we know that choices must be made, so we worked diligently to keep the budget balanced, but also to improve effectiveness of staff and our services. So in the proposed budget revision, while we are proposing these adjustments, we also wanted to suggest other adjustments in order to fund these requests, mainly by a few strategies. One, we are suggesting that we delay certain non-essential capital projects, and Director Mike Dever for Public Works is here if you have any questions about that. Second, we are restoring certain programs to the HHS levy that were previously funded by the Health and Human Services levy but had been moved to the general fund. We want to move them back, and Budget Director Maggie Keenan can answer your questions about that. We initially proposed a decrease in funding for the medical examiner's office, specifically for the crime lab, but we have decided to pull that back. So Chief Bova is not here. We're not going to ask you to do that. So again, Mike Dever can answer those questions, or Maggie Keenan. And then in closing, I just want to stress that we are not making these requests lightly, that the proposed revisions were the result of hard work and careful planning by our leadership team and their respective staff teams. We took a deep dive into our departments, and we concluded that we just could not wait until the next budget cycle because they were so critically important to deliver on the promises that we have made to the people of this county. So with that, I just want to thank you for your consideration and the opportunity to talk with you today.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the Chief of Staff? Hearing none. So Chief Bova will not be presenting, but Director Dever will.
Director Dever is here if you have any questions, but Chief Bova will not be here. That's right. He will not. He's not prepared to present because we are not asking for the cut to the crime lab.
And so Director Dever will only be speaking if there are questions about
delaying the capital projects, and then Maggie can talk about this restoring some programs to the HHS levy from the general fund.
Any questions on the capital reductions? Okay, hearing none, thank you. Next, we'll have Maggie Keenan, Director of OBM, and Dennis Kennedy, Fiscal Officer. And also, I'd like to recognize Scott Tuma, who will be joining County Council January 3rd, as District 4 has entered the room.
Up there?
Councilman-elect.
Oh, I said it. I don't know how to get that off. Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of council. Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. I'm joined by Maggie Keenan, the Budget Director for the county, and we'd like to just go over some of the parameters that we considered in terms of developing this update for 2017, and then to answer any specific questions that the members of council may have with respect to the legislation that's been introduced to adjust the budget. Just to run through, our 2017 estimates at mid-year were used as our base for revenue and expenditure estimates. Those were adjusted accordingly based on more recent data that was available prior to the development of the final piece of legislation. The 2017 salary levels increased 2% over 2016. 2018 and 2019 salaries also increased 2%.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I just want to direct our colleagues. You're referring to this handout, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so the handout that is titled 2017 Recommended Budget Update has the information that the director is referring to. Did you have a PowerPoint for that or no?
We're bringing it up now.
Okay, all right.
There was a change there at the end.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead and continue, I'm sorry.
So as I was saying, the 2017 salary appropriations increased 2% over 2016 levels. And again, 2018, 2019 also increased 2% each year respectively. There's been discussion about the additional costs associated with employee health and wellness. In the 2017 update, we're projecting a budget of 9% higher than the mid-year estimate. That's necessary to accommodate a recovery of the mandated reserve that we need in the self-insurance fund, and some recommendations that we received from the county benefits consultant in anticipation of inflationary costs that are associated with our healthcare plans. Workers' compensation chargebacks have been temporarily suspended in order to draw down on the cash balance in the workers' compensation fund. We have looked at that fund balance and considered there's enough reserves in there right now to temporarily suspend chargebacks for that. So we're going to use up some of that money to get it to a more manageable level. No other inflationary increases have been applied to other expense lines in the budget. Increases in the categories such as contracts, client services, et cetera, are based on our known changes to the contract amounts at this particular time, but otherwise we have not associated a general inflationary or cost of living increase to those appropriations. If we'll move to the next piece in the handout, this gives a summary of the general operating fund. As you can see, that the original 2017 adopted budget revenue was $368 million, projected revenue. Our projected expense was approximately $368 million as well. And our percentage of reserves as a balance to our expenditures was 21%. In this new recommended budget, our revenue adjustment has been lowered to $362 million. The expense projections have been increased to $369 million. And because of the change from the original adopted budget in terms of ending balances in 2015, we're actually at a 25% percentage of balance to expenditures in the new recommended budget. A 2% increase in the sales tax revenue is assumed in both 2017 and 2018. That's the smallest year-over-year increase we've had since 2011. On average, sales taxes increased approximately 4% over the prior year every year since 2011, but we're taking into account some modifications that are anticipated late in the year next year related to the application of the sales tax to premiums paid by Medicaid MCOs. That'll go into effect in July. We're hopeful that the state legislature will take some action in terms of restoring some of those monies. I know it's been a concern of not only the county, but the Transit Authority and various other entities with the state. So we're hopeful that some corrective or remedial action will be taken during the course of the year. But right now, because of that, at least for 2007, we've lowered our projections to 2% for the entire year. The 2017 budget is higher than the revenue estimate by $6.9 million. That causes an operating shortfall. There's two major one-time expenses that basically comprise the majority of that. A $5.5 million subsidy to the Economic Development Fund and a $1.1 million for the cost of the $15 minimum wage special election that's going to be conducted in the city of Cleveland. That's monies that the Board of Elections will need in 2017. Those monies should be reimbursed in 2018. As far as the reductions that we had recommended as part of this update.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Yes.
Director, Mr. Miller has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Director. My question is on the sales tax, and it's whether you're expecting an increase of 2% in 2017 and 2018, even with the impact of the Medicare sales tax, Medicaid sales tax, managed care factored in, or would the effect of that change change the numbers from the 2%?
Do you want to get that?
So the way we calculated it was we assumed a 2% increase, and then we applied the changes as a result of the managed care. So the actual increase in sales tax is not 2% in the budget, but we assumed a 2% rate of growth.
Understood. Okay. And since the Medicaid factor is not in that 2% assumption, on what basis did you use a lower assumption than what we've usually been using?
We're just trying to be conservative. We've had increases going back since 2011 of more than 4%. We kind of assume, based on my conversations with the other urban counties, that this isn't going to last forever. So we just want to scale it back a little bit so that we're not appropriating and then have to make cuts mid-year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you. Please continue.
Just to highlight some of the recommended reductions that came out of this process, the Chief of Staff discussed some of these. We had several meetings, both with the Chief and with the County Executive, to go over individually all the departmental budgets to come up with this update for 2017. Do you want me to wait? Yeah. I'll try and get caught up here. Page 4. Just to summarize some of the targeted reductions that were included in the submission to council for this budget update. There's a $150,000 decrease in the annual allocation to the Department of Public Safety and Justice Services related to the cash matches for municipal firefighter grants. Funding for this source has historically been underutilized, so we thought it appropriate to make an adjustment here moving forward through 2017. As the Chief of Staff also referenced, we have, after consideration, changed the original recommendation that is included in the submission for the decrease in the regional crime lab associated with the medical examiner's office. We'll be proposing some changes to return the subsidy to the witness victim program over to the Levy side of operations to accommodate restructuring, and we can answer any questions related to that. Also included is a $400,000 decrease to the budget of juvenile court, which represents the cost of mediation. Court assesses a fee on filings to support alternative dispute resolution that is not being fully utilized in our estimation. So the intent is to resume the 50-50 split between the ADR fund and the general fund for mediation in 2018. As discussed earlier, there's a $1.4 million decrease in the subsidy towards the capital improvements plan. I know Mr. Devers here and can address any particulars related to the deferment of some of those projects into 2018 and beyond. But that comprised a major component of the reductions that were proposed here in the legislation. We're also reducing the contingency reserve by $1 million, and we're eliminating the $3 million vacancy reserve that was included in the original budget. Funding, we're comfortable that there's funding in individual agency budgets to support critical vacancies that can't be otherwise supported by regular attrition. We had set up that vacancy reserve because of the difficulty in hiring people on a timely basis and some of the artificial surpluses that created. So we're satisfied that we can do without that in 2017 and still give everybody the necessary resources that they need to operate.
Okay, before we go to the next page, any questions? Mr. Miller?
Just one on the juvenile court as to, you said that you're going to resume the 50-50 split between the ADR fund and the general fund for mediation in 2018. How is mediation going to be paid for in 2017? Or is it just eliminated?
It's not eliminated. We are recommending that the court use their ADR fund because they assess these fees specifically for that purpose, but they haven't been using it to pay for mediation.
Okay. Just as a follow-up to that, are we saying that we're expecting the ADR fund to fully pay for all the 2017 mediation costs?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Brown and then Mr. Gallagher.
My question too was about the juvenile court. So if you could just explain, I'm not real clear, the mediation fund, the 50-50 split, is it voluntary or mandated, the mediation, I guess?
It would be voluntary because we can't dictate to the court how they spend their special revenue funds. That's up to the administrative judge in the court. Historically, though, it has been 50% general fund and 50% mediation. I'm honestly not clear when it switched to complete general fund. There was a period of time when I wasn't with the county, so I don't know how that switch happened, but the fund has been accumulating. They have a cash balance now of, I think, just short of $1 million. So we're recommending for 1 year only that they fully fund the mediation services, and then we resume the split because they don't generate enough money to fund it 100% long-term.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Gallagher.
And you said, in your opinion, this is what should happen. What's the opinion of the court?
I think the court will probably disagree in the short term, but historically they have always agreed to this.
Okay, they're unaware of this?
No, we've made them aware of that.
So what'd they say?
I didn't have the conversations exactly. I'm sure their response was not
I won't hold you to it.
enthusiastic. But this is how it has been I hate to say like this is how it's always been, but this is how it has been in the past. And they know that they're assessing these fees for that purpose and they're not using the fund. They spend about $25,000 a year out of the fund.
Well, I like to remind people, the only reason that we're all sitting here is because things used to go just that way in the past. So let's try and not use that because the past isn't so great.
I only say that in this instance, though, to stress that in the past, they were using their special revenue funds. And I think the general fund should be the payer of last resort. So if they're charging the families that come into the court, the $34 now is the fee, I think we should be using the money.
Okay, just wondering what they thought because I'm sure we're going to hear about it.
I'm not so sure actually that they're going to raise that much of an issue with this one because I think they understand, at least for this fund in particular, that that's what the money is used for.
We'll see. Thank you.
I have a question. I'm going to jump to the last item, the $1 million decrease in the the reserves. I recall that when we set up this reserve, that we had effectively taken the departmental budgets down to the actual headcounts that were in the chairs and hired on payroll at that time, and that any additional positions would go through this reserve. But now I believe I heard that it's the belief that we can reduce it by this $1 million because money can be found within the departmental budgets for additional staffing. Which is that? How's that work?
So the $3 million, it was originally pulled out of the agency budgets, but I think historically we have been overfunding the agencies for their vacancies because we're not taking into consideration regular attrition. So of that $3 million, we've only transferred just short of $400,000 to fund vacancies. And I think arguably we even sent it to agencies that might not need the appropriation come year end. So when we looked at the budget going forward for 17, we did include funding in select agency budgets to fill certain positions, like maybe the ones that are more high priced or that don't have regular turnover. But the other ones will continue to approve hiring requests, but they can be funded out of the existing appropriation. The $3 million, I think, unnecessarily obligates general fund resources.
Okay, I was just reminded that when individuals speak, please speak directly into the microphone. We're having some trouble hearing with the speakers in the back of the chambers. So you're saying basically through the natural attrition, we'll be able to fill that we're not that there's, my recollection is correct that the budget included the hard head counts of people sitting in the chairs, and the funding that we're talking about is coming from natural attrition to fill those positions.
Yes, but I want to be clear that the budget update that we submitted does include funding for some specific vacancies, so it's not pure headcount.
Okay, can we get a list of what those are?
Sure.
Not right now, but as a follow-up. And just a question, maybe to fiscal officer, the $1.4 million decrease in capital improvements. I know that Director Devers here to address that. Would this be the appropriate time for him to come up and address what those changes are, or is there a later discussion in the presentation for him to make that disclosure?
No, that'd be fine.
Okay, Director, if you can come up and please explain the $1.4 million in I'll assume they're deferrals and not cuts, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Michael Dever with the Department of Public Works. Yes, those items that we've identified are basically deferrals until outgoing years. There's a few items that we did some reductions in relation to some of the consultant services that we were forecasting. We've had a few additional staff come on, and so I believe we can handle some of that in-house now also.
Okay, so are there any specific projects that are being deferred?
There is a few projects that were associated to a few of the facilities that we will be into discussions into the new year about the maintenance facilities. An initiative that we are still formulating the plan for it, but to defer those improvements to those three outlying facilities, specifically sanitary, the York Road maintenance, Road and Bridge maintenance facility, and the fleet facility.
So those three are internal facilities to the county. They're not road or bridge projects that are being deferred.
That's correct.
So they're basically internal maintenance.
That's right.
And deferral of contracts.
That's exactly right.
Okay. Any questions? Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
So, page 5.
I'm going to flip that. Page 5 includes a summary, as the Chief of Staff referred to earlier in her presentation, of all the new funding that's included in this update. It's limited to 4 major sources after adjustments internally for other items. And I know there's representatives here from each one of those areas to answer any specific questions. So you want to wait to the end to do that?
Actually, yes, because these items that you've identified here, we do have, as you said, presenters on the agenda to speak to these issues.
Okay. So moving on to page 6, this is an overview of the general fund that includes the 0.25% sales tax fund that's set aside for capital for the Medical Mart Hotel Convention Center. The original adopted budget was $432.4 million. That was projected revenue. Projected expense was $421 million. The percentage of balance to expenditures based on the numbers that we had at the time the original biennium budget was produced was 18%. This recommended budget, after adjustment, has projected revenue of $433.7 million, expenditures of $422.8 million, and our balance to expenditures is 32%. So in terms of the general fund in total, with both the operating fund and the 0.25% sales tax fund, we're over the minimum requirement of 25% balance of expenditures. The 2017 recommended general fund budget totals $422.9 million. It results in available ending cash balance after accounting for the capital improvement plan and various carryover reserves of $136.1 million, which is the 32% as projected in this current budget update.
Mr. Miller.
Looking at the chart on page 3, the revenue projection went down 6 million. And looking at the chart on page 6, the revenue projection went up 1 million. So I'm assuming by that the 0.25 sales tax estimate improved substantially over what was in the original budget, somewhere in the realm of 7 million. Is that a correct assumption?
No, the decrease in revenue in the general operating fund is not sales tax, so it's other revenue sources that have decreased.
Well, let me put it in a different way. On page 3, you include
$6 million.
on page 3, you include the whole thing, but not the 0.25 sales tax, and the revenue went down 6 million. When you include the 0.25 sales tax, the revenue improved by 1 million. So I want you to explain what that shift is about.
So a lot of it is the anticipated increase in the sales tax. The impact to the managed care is only hitting the fourth quarter of 2017, so the larger impact is in 2018. The impact in 2017, I believe, was, I'd have to probably get back to you, it was like 200,000 or something like that. So the increase is in the sales tax.
And in your proposed budget update, well, let's first go back to the original biennial budget. As I recall, refresh my memory, but as I recall, there were allocations made both in 2016 and 2017 of some money from the 0.25 sales tax into the general fund. Can you remind me of what those were for 2016 and 2017?
In 2016, it was a transfer of 16.5 million, and in 2017, it's a transfer of 5.5 million. And we haven't changed that.
That was my next question. So that stays the same.
Mm-hmm.
So based on the $7 million swing and the fact that you've not changed the draw on the sales tax, the reserve in the 0.25 sales tax fund should be considerably larger than what was in the original budget. Is that a
That's
fair?
correct.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's just I'm not saying take some of it. All I'm saying is just we should be aware that it's out there.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Any other questions? No. Continue, please.
Two more brief updates. One is on the levy side of the budget. Our original adopted budget had projected revenue of $237.6 million. We're adjusting that in this update to $231 million. Our expenditure estimates originally were 237.6 million. We're adjusting that downwards to 230.3 million in the update. The balance to expenditures in the original budget that was passed by council was 19%. Our requirement is to keep a balance of no less than 10%. With the adjustments and the revenue changes and the actual cash balances that we recorded subsequent to the completion of the budget process, the balance to expenditures for the levy side of operations will be 24%. That's roughly equated to $54.6 million at the end of the year. Any questions on the levy?
Any questions? Mr. Miller?
In the new numbers, you have an excess of revenue over expenditures of roughly 0.6 million. But if I recall, there is a drawdown on the PA funds. And can you tell me how much the PA funds are going to be drawn down in 2016? Or rather in 2017?
In 2017, I'll have to get back to you with the exact number, but I believe it's 15 million, 15 point something.
So, so what that means is that even though it looks balanced here in a structural sense, the levy is not balanced, because you could not draw down $15 million in PA funds on an ongoing basis. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you. Any further questions? Hearing none, please continue.
Just to summarize to the next slide, this is a summary of all funds as part of the 2017 recommended budget update. On an all funds basis, our budget totals $1.48 billion. That's $20 million less than the original revenue estimate of $1.46 billion. The increase in expenses over revenue is supported by beginning cash balances in the various funds, and we, I believe, have provided the detail on those balances as part of the submission. And the combined all funds ending cash balance projected after accounting for the capital improvement plan and carryover reserves totals $467.5 million, which is 31% of total expenditures projected for 2017. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions of any members of council or turn it over to the specific departments.
Any questions? Mr. Miller?
I'm going to go back to the PA funds for one follow-up question on that subject. You gave an estimate for 2017 of a drawdown of 15 million, and I know it's just an estimate, but let's for the moment say that that's the number. My question is whether that is a net figure, because the PA funds get receipts. So is that a net figure of receipts to the PA fund minus what's taken from the PA funds? Or is it not a net figure where there's some income to the PA funds that would partially offset that $15 million drawdown?
I think, honestly, we need to have a larger discussion about the PA funds and the drawdowns, but it's not a net figure. So we're assuming in the budget that we're going to take $15 million out of the cash balance. And the cash balance in the combined PA funds is much more than, I'll have to get back to you with the exact amount, but it's much more than 15 million. But I think historically we have understated the revenue estimates in the Health and Human Service area. So we're very conservative. We usually, in the past, have only budgeted and projected based on the allocations we receive from the state, but a lot of our money is entitlement money, which means they're open-ended allocations, and I think we could do a better job of projecting the actual revenue that's going to come in when we know that we're spending more in the areas of like Medicaid that is open-ended.
Mr. Chairman, Director, that was good information, but maybe I missed something and didn't find a specific answer to my question, so I'm going to restate it. And my question is, presuming the drawdown is 15 million on the PA fund in 2017, are you projecting that the year-end balance for the PA fund will be $15 million less than it started on the first day of 2017? Or is the difference between the beginning of the year and the end of the year less than 15 million because there will be other things that offset that drawdown?
No, we're assuming it'll be 15 million less.
Okay, fine. Good to know.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. Okay, great. And then we'll move on in the presentation. And in following in our book, in our booklet, we're going to move into communications, which the information starts on page 23. So I'll direct my colleagues to page 23 in the book. If you'll notice, each of the presenters has been asked to comply with section 701.04 of our code, which requires that they answer the 4 basic questions, which are outlined on page 23. So that the requests have comply with that code section. And also, before we start, just to let the record reflect that Mr. Schron and Ms. Simon have joined the meeting after roll call was taken, so please mark them as present. Director.
Good afternoon, Council Chairman and members of Council. Thank you for the opportunity to address you about my request. What you are seeing here, this handout, is kind of a distillation of some of the materials in your book, and it really is a focus on the strategic direction of the Communications Department and talks about the 2 major targets that I and my team are working to hit. So I just wanted to lead off talking about that and then talk about the specific request. So the first target is a strong awareness of the county's role as a regional leader and the driving force behind positive change for all residents and businesses. And I'm looking at it from a from-to sort of a statement, wanting to move from confusion around what county government actually does, which we know exists in the community, to having key stakeholders, being residents, businesses, strategic partners, and funders, understand and being engaged in moving the county and our residents forward with our initiatives. From intermittent opportunities to communicate the vision to a steady stream of content that reflects our vision, initiatives, and results. Our web currently doesn't reflect the vision in its entirety, and there are really a lot of siloed efforts in terms of communication and materials coming from the different departments. So one of the things that I've been working on all this year is making sure that all the content platforms support common brand themes and initiatives, and that the agencies have things that are rolled out to them that they can use. And the coverage is quite often dependent upon media interest, which we know is not always positive. So we are moving to more of a newsroom approach where we develop proactive stories. We've launched a blog. We have multimedia content and social media, which is one of the streams that we can control, amping that up significantly. So that's the first more externally focused piece, which is really where the department is focused currently. And I can talk a little bit more about that in the sense that we've really amped that up in the past year. The second target is creating a culture of employee ownership and investment in the organization, and that's what the Chief of Staff was addressing to, saying to you in the very beginning, and that's something that we take very seriously. We want to move from a place where employees don't completely understand how their daily work impacts the overall organization and the goals that we are wanting to achieve, to regular communications to the employees regarding county initiatives. And then quite often you'll have people in one department who don't understand what the other department does, and then also disorganized internal communications platform. I don't know if you've been on our intranet lately, but it really needs to be resolved, fixed. And there is no internal communications plan. So my major ask today is to actually have hire a communications specialist who will focus specifically on internal communications, supporting and collaborating with HR, because it's very important that I work very closely with Douglas and his team to make sure that we're on the same page, but doing things like employee surveys, satisfaction surveys, redesigning the intranet platform, and then creating an entire communications plan and collaborating with other departments to bring that forth. So that's really my major ask. The other piece of it is that as I am working to continue to professionalize and make more proactive the communications department, I am going to be redesigning some roles. So as an example, and if you look in the handout, there's an org chart.
It's page 27.
Thank you. So you'll see the internal communications piece. The external affairs is really the staff that exists right now. I have increased the scope and responsibilities of these folks. I've asked them to be more proactive. So we're not just sending out press releases and reacting to media, but we are doing a lot more than has been done in the past. The editorial director, I'm asking for an editorial director. What I've done is I have increased the scope of responsibility of one of the communications specialists and asked him to take over the editorial management of our blog, which we launched a few months ago. And then the production services line is really just dotted line relationships to IT, video, photography, and designers. So that's the structure that I'm looking at. The other line, the request that is in the request, is for other operating, and really the significant pieces in there, designing and printing our annual report, doing social media advertising, because in order to increase our social media feeds, with Facebook, you can't actually do that organically. They've set it up so that you need to do sponsored posts in order to increase your feeds, and I have some figures about that. And then also professional development conferences and training. This team has nothing in the budget for that. So I've got a group of 5 or 6 people who literally, I think it might have been like $300 for the year. And if I'm increasing their scope and the professionalization, I really would like to be able to have the latitude to get them some more training. So those are the major asks within there. And then just to review some of the things that we did this year in addition to our normal activities, we produced the 2015 year-end overview, which was a 54-page book, and we will be doing that again. We launched the new homepage website and launched the How Do I section, which created an easy-to-navigate platform for people who need our services. We are launching the County Executives Updated Pages, and we are starting the process of launching the Sustainability Department, the Department of Economic Development, the Department of Children and Family Services, and we're working with every single department to go through training to teach them how to develop web content and also how to put their current content into a more professional design. So right now, I don't know if you're aware, but we have 92 websites and 272,000 web pages, which is a lot. So that's the scope of the work that we're taking on. We launched the blog, County News Now, and we're publishing 1 or 2 posts weekly. We launched our new brand, Together We Thrive, and we launched the print kit and materials templates for all departments to use, and we're conducting training on Thursday for that. And then we created materials to reflect our mission, vision, values. For social media, we grew our social media feeds. Facebook from 1,560 likes followers to 1,940 likes followers. So you'll see that there was a very concerted effort for that entire year, and we were only able to grow by, 400 people. So that's why we need the sponsorship piece there. The Twitter, we went from 9,263 to over 11,000. That's probably our strongest channel right now because you don't have to pay anything to grow your followers. And we contracted with Social Bakers, which is a tracking and posting tools, and trained communications personnel throughout county government in the usage of Social Bakers. And one thing I want to address in terms of the social media posts, they cover the gamut. It's not, people just appearing at events and things like that. This past week, we did the Scam Squad launch. We did holiday ideas around the county. So part of what we do is promote the positive pieces about Cuyahoga County. We promoted the dogs calendar for the social media, for their calendar. We talked about the Cuyahoga County Jail Veterans Pod, which was just created. We talked about the Minority Business Loan Fund with the Urban League. And then we also shone a light on the employee spotlight. So you can see that the social media feeds are really very broad, and all of our activities are extremely broad about all the county initiatives that we're going through. So if anybody has any questions.
Any questions for the director? Yeah, Ms. Simon.
Thank you. Thanks for coming before us. I have a question on this logo, Together We Thrive. Who came up with that logo?
So we worked with a consultant, Precision New Media, and I think you may be referring to the South Euclid brand. Is that the kind of the direction of the question, or?
Well, no, actually, the first question was, we're paying a consultant beyond what the department is supposed to be doing?
So, yes, it requires a whole different kind of consideration when you're talking about brand development and that sort of, activity. Not something that's in the skill set of this group. Yeah, I have run brands, but I always worked with an outside advertising agency.
Is this contractor on a monthly fee basis, or was this a contract for a set amount of money?
It's a monthly fee basis for 6 months, which just went through Border Control.
And when did that become effective, the 6-month run?
Unfortunately, it's retroactive. In other words, the fee for services, the services were rendered because this person was on a contract before, and it was my understanding that I could just continue the contract, and then when I went into the procurement process, the work had already been started. I thought I was just re-upping a contract that already existed before I came on board.
How much is the 6-month retroactive amount?
It's $18,000, which is, just for those of you, that's an extremely cheap brand building program.
And the question would come down to this company, so this is retroactive payment for the last 6 months, 18,000, or is that perspective?
It is, I'm not sure I understand your question.
What's the 6-month contract term?
As soon as it's signed, it's still in the procurement process. It's taken that long to get it through.
So that's for work already done?
Basically.
And what about future contracting? Is it the intention to continue to employ this company going forward?
Yeah, so the individual who runs the company has Dennis Willard, who worked with county executive prior, will be there on an as-needed basis for crisis communication, which is what he has been doing with the county executive for, quite often. So there's that piece, and then the brand work, which has been done, obviously, and then also working with us on some more social media training and deployment.
So you want to hire somebody to work on social media, and then we also have a consultant who's going to be working on social media?
No, I'm not asking to hire anybody for social media.
Okay. So Together We Thrive is the county's logo that we paid this consultant to come up with, correct?
It's the brand statement, yeah.
The brand statement for South Euclid is Come Together and Thrive. That was already in existence. And so they're stuck. I guess it's disappointing that we paid a consultant to come up with a brand that's already been adopted by a municipality that's almost identical. I just have to say that.
No, I appreciate
it. It doesn't
your
make sense
comment.
that we came up in South Euclid. I represent South Euclid, and it seems they just lifted it from the existing brand and changed a word, and we're paying this consultant to do something like that. I didn't know if the county council knew that South Euclid's brand has Come Together and Thrive, and then the county paid somebody to come up with Together We Thrive. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have Mr. Schron. Any other questions? Mr. Schron.
So I understand that it's $216,000 to follow on to Simon's for this brand service. Is that $18,000?
$18,000.
Over what period of time?
It's a 6-month contract, so it's about $3,000.
Oh, okay, all right. I was thinking you were saying it was $18,000
no.
per. Okay, I thought that was.
I'm a very small, cheap department.
Well, no, I guess what I find interesting is that when you usually are establishing brand, at least in the consumer side, which I assume you've got that background, we're doing it because we're competing against somebody else. We're trying to beat our product against their product, and I'm not sure I see where our brand is competing against any other brand out there to be going that route.
I do understand why we want people to understand how we use our products, how we use our services, how we get them to come in and be better consumers, and if they're not aware. But that's just an awareness as to making sure everybody knows what tools we have and how those tools get used both internally and externally. When we're
That's a
trying to
really
establish
good
brand.
point.
Yeah, it just seems
So-
like we're trying to establish a brand because we're competing against Lorraine County. We're competing against Geauga County.
Yeah.
I don't think we are.
No, and that was not the point. And I'd be happy to either broadly or individually present to you the brand justification document, how the workshops were held and how we came about the language and really the reasons and the why behind it. I also think it's worth noting that we've been working on mission, vision, values as a leadership group, and the brand, the mission, vision, and values all ladder up. So I think when you talk about a brand, it's not always because you're in competition, but because you also want to articulate who you are. It gives people something to, language to work with, and there's a lot of language that sort of flows from the Together We Thrive that the departments are using to internalize in their own documentation.
Well, I am a big fan of, I was the guy who had, one of the guys who sat down with Ed Fitzgerald and said, we need to reject the old logo, and we need to put a new logo up there, because I think it needs to make a statement as to how we flushed all the past and we started fresh. I understand that, but I just am a little boggled when government is out there marketing government as a government. And we see that with, I mean, just look around this town and see these logos that are appearing all over the place, from the sewer department, from the water department, and that means they're writing checks to all these people to get their brand established out there. And when in fact, we all use the same sewer, we all use the same products, and the county is the county providing these health and human services. So I really get concerned when we start going down spending money for brand recognition and buying logos and places and placements at local fairs and local trade shows and local activities where our brand is getting stronger and established. So I really am going to be conscious of where, I mean, if it's following the regular commercial market, those are the things that we do in my business.
Absolutely, and where I, when I did Cleveland.com and we did the brand internally, we spent millions of dollars. That is not what's on the table here. The way we are going to be able to spread our message is through proactive communications and then making sure that every department actually utilizes these templates, because we have a very broad distribution with our materials. And so even just doing that is going to increase our brand recognition.
Absolutely.
I'm not looking at spending any money on marketing except for the Facebook ads, and that's a whole different, but again, that's $5,000. So.
Yeah, I just, I agree 100% that there needs to be unity. Everybody needs to have the common message. That's all, basic brand management 101.
Right.
But I don't follow the consumer side where we're going to then try spend money to get that brand to pick up other ways in which we're quasi competing with somebody else.
No, there is no consumer marketing initiative proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions? No.
All right. I'm losing people.
No.
Your brand is not getting stronger. Your brand's getting weaker.
That's communications. Okay. Next on the agenda is the Court of Appeals. Presenting today will be Judge Larry A. Jones Sr. and soon-to-be Court Administrator Aaron O'Toole. They're going to be presenting items that were not recommended in the budget. So whereas the previous items were included, the item they're going to be discussing is not. So, Judge, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and council members. First, thank you allow us to address you with our modest increase. Have with us today, next year, our court administrator, Ms. Erin O'Toole, and she'll make a couple of comments, and then I will make a few comments.
Great. If I could draw my colleagues' attention to page 32.
Good afternoon, Council. Thank you for your time in considering our request to restore the $15,406 that was reduced from our operating expense-based budget. We just want to clarify that we understand in 2015, the court did commit to expending $15,000 of its special revenue fund towards operating expenses, and we are prepared to do that. But we still expect to have a deficit of $15,000 in our operating expenses, which is for continued education, printing, postage, matters of those types. So we would request that that be restored to our budget. Also, just to point out, we don't have a lot of room in our budget because our salaries and employee expenses are all the responsibility of the state, which was transferred, a portion of that the county used to be responsible for. So that's an over $2 million a year savings to the county. So now with that, unless there's any questions of me, I would have Judge Johnson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And, you know, I told myself I'm going to be nice, calm, and collected today, so I'm going to try to do that. You know, I've been in government over 30-plus years now, city council for 6.5 years, 21 years in Cleveland Municipal Court as a judge, and the last 8 years in Court of Appeals. And I'm very familiar with the budget process, and I was not the administrative judge, but during the last biennium, the county executive came to us, came to the administrative judge, say, we have a budget crisis, we need you to work with us. And we cut our budget. You know, we cut it to bare bones. And I'll be quite frankly, had I been an administrative judge, we would not have instituted all those cuts. In fact, we agreed to use our special project fees, which are only fees we have on a discretion basis to do some things, okay, as far as computers or whatever. And we get a whopping $15,000 of special project fees a year versus municipal court. When I was in municipal court, we got $100,000. Common pleas court get $100,000 because we have very limited cases, okay. I say that out to you, Mr. Chairman, council members. I had a meeting yesterday with the director, Ms. King, and I told her how, number one, I was disappointed with the county executive administration, and number two, that we should not be here this afternoon, okay? We come here asking for $15,000, and we cut our budget to the bare bones, okay, and took cuts which really was in our best interest, but being a team player and trying to cooperate with the county, although we are separate branches of government, we did that, okay? Every other branch of the government not being in, if that's a situation, you go back and say, no, we cut to the bare bones, but we need $15,000 here and there, okay? For whatever reason, they decided to turn that down, okay? So we're here today in front of you, okay? We don't have operate a exorbitant court over there. We do outstanding job, and we would not be here asking for $15,000 if we didn't need the $15,000. As a result of that, internally we have put something in place that we should not be back in front of you because now we have a finance committee consists of the administrative judge, the incoming administrative judge, and outgoing administrative judge because we only serve for a year. So the budgets we submit now to the county will ensure reflect that we can operate at a reasonable level, okay? So we're here asking that, you know, this $15,000 be put back in our budget. And, you know, when we consider our budget is approximately $700,000, you compare us to the other courts, I mean, $24 million common pleas court, you know, $700,000. And Ms. O'Toole is correct. Several years ago, cooperating with the county, we took our employees off the county budget, and they now on the state of Ohio budget. So that continued $2 million. So, you know, we're not asking for anything assorted here today. We would like for this request to be made, and that's pretty much what I have to say.
All right, thank you. And any questions? Mr. Miller.
Thank you very much for coming in, and my question is just whether the 15,000 is for any specific purpose or whether it's just part of the overall general cost of operations.
It's operation costs. And again, all our budget, personnel, whatever, is done through the state of Ohio. And we wouldn't be here asking for we listen to other presentations, we'd not be here asking for $15,000 if we didn't need it.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Judge. Thanks for being here. I can tell you, when I saw the 15, I was like, why are they coming? But other courts have come to us, and we've told them for a substantial amount more, and we've told them no, and they just didn't even bother because we just didn't have the money. So that's why you don't see juvenile and common pleas and everybody else. during the last budget, the courts came to us, which I thought was unheard of in these difficult times, and said, if you have any money, give it to domestic relations. And the Court of Appeals was one of them, so we did.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the past, we want to be part of the process, okay?
Right.
And we cut. And sometimes you cut too much. And if you cut too much, then you especially, if you've been proactive, part of the process, say, we cut too much, then, let's sit down and discuss it and resolve it, okay? And that's what I would have hoped transpired. I'd love this August a body or whatever, but things like this, I think, can be handled through the executive branch and the judicial branch. But we forced to come here before you today and actually.
Well, you're in the right place because we make the decisions on where the money goes.
Absolutely.
But I just want to let you know, to be fair, the other courts have throughout the year come to us and asked, is there any room? And they've been told no.
Yeah.
And
Mr.
for
Councilman,
good programs.
Right,
I mean,
Mr. Chairman, to Councilman, I think you're absolutely right. And I think that's why it's incumbent upon us. And I told Ms. Keehan, okay, the budgets we submit in the future will be what we really need, okay? I understand it's priorities of the executive branch and priorities of council, okay? But it's going to be a budget we really need, okay? So if we give a budget we really need, then we live with that, okay? But this budget, we were told, no, you got to do this for us, you got to do that, and we did that. And we expect some cooperation.
Okay.
But I'm a former member of council, so we know you cut the.
You've been through the wars.
Absolutely. And I tried to stay calm and cool and collected, and no offense to Ms. Keaton, outstanding budget manager. But our point is that we are separate branches of government. We want to work with you guys, but we do have needs to be taken care of.
Thank you. Any other questions? Just a point of clarification, I believe, and you made reference to the salaries which are now being paid for by the state. I believe they should always have been paid for by the state, correct? And the county was paying that, and we appealed to the state for them to begin to start taking over their responsibility, which the county had been funding. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
But
So
we
it's-
work with you guys to get.
I'm not disputing.
Yeah.
I'm just clarifying for the record.
Yes.
I don't want people to believe that all of a sudden that the state was then picking up a responsibility that was the county's. Actually, the county been picking up a state responsibility.
Absolutely.
We couldn't get a determination as to how long that had been going on. So I just wanted just as a point of clarification, Mr. Sharon?
How many other Court of Appeals in the state was the state not picking up, other than Cotw County?
I'm not sure I can.
I don't think it was any. I think we were the only county, I thought. So we were the only ones that were actually not getting the benefit. So when you allude to it being transferred on over, that was only being done what every other Court of Appeals was already being funded through the state. So it was not asking anybody to suffer, take any punishment or pain. We were actually saying that we were actually overpaying as a county for years and years and years in regards to this. That's my recollection.
And that might be it. And they call us they call it the state of Cotw County. I mean, they.
Okay. So if you're not aware of any other Court of Appeals, I'm not either, nor is I don't think anybody else. So we were the ones getting here in the county getting the short end of the stick, it seems to me. And it was always an obligation, we believe, that belonged to the state properly anyway.
Very good.
All right. Judge, no further questions? No further questions. I want to thank you for presenting today. Council will take your recommendation under consideration.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. The next functional area before us is the Department of Development, and Director Carter will present his new initiatives that are included in the budget, and that presentation starts on page 34 in our book.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the council.
Do you have a PowerPoint presentation? Or?
It's not a presentation, it's just some highlights on the budget request and then some of our results from this year.
Okay.
Also, I've got a brief statement that will sync with the PowerPoint. While she's bringing it up, I can go ahead and get started.
Hold on one second then.
I think we also made copies.
No, we got it.
Okay.
Ted, we got it.
Okay. Oh, it's over here.
For my colleagues, as this is being brought up, it's Once again, on page 34, and it's also the handout that looks similar to this, or I'm sorry, looks identical to this. Nothing similar to it.
Okay. Members of the council, good afternoon. My confirmation hearing in March, I outlined a more aggressive go-forward posture by the Office of Development. It has been a productive year, as now is a unique moment in time for Cleveland and Cuyahoga County, which we have to maximize as we elevate the region's and the county's economic competitiveness posture. During the past 9 months, I've been busy touring the county. I've visited almost all of your districts, learned the county economic development ecosystem, and assessed the culture and capability of the Office of Development team. And working with our team, have worked hard to execute our pipeline. And obviously also I've been learning the county government. But before I drill into our budget requests, I'd like to review some of the highlights from this year that the team has delivered. I appreciate the opportunity to make some modest adjustments to the current budget based on my experience here after 10 months. It is important to emphasize the context that we are a revenue-producing office, producing revenue for the county and our municipalities. So let me just go to slide 1, please. Am I supposed to do that from here? So here are some of the key results from this year to date. 2016 business loan activity, 49 loans, 1,000 jobs created, slightly over 1,000 jobs retained. Total impact is over 2,000 jobs, and that seems to be our historic baseline for $16.6 million of county dollars invested for a total of $103 million leverage. And then some of the key projects which this body has approved. You're familiar with all of them, so I won't belabor them. Recently, we've also last week announced with, and this is an example of leverage, a new initiative with Morgan Stanley and the Urban League. Morgan Stanley has committed $2 million of capital to Cuyahoga County to invest in minority and women-owned businesses. And that is also wrapped in with some technical assistance services that the Urban League will provide. And so we're very excited about this new initiative. First time that Morgan Stanley has deployed capital in this market. And this is a pilot for 12 other similar initiatives that they'll be doing across the country. And then we have closed the Growth Opportunity Fund for high growth minority businesses, which is a Jumpstart subsidiary. And then the home repair, as you know, we do both economic development and community development. So our home repair, over 4,000 applications have been submitted by residents across the county. Our Muni Grant Program, which you all are well aware of, and then the foreclosure prevention counseling. And then working with members of the council, we developed the guidelines for the CDSG program, and those applications are expected to be received they're due December 23rd.
If I can interrupt, just in anticipation of a question from Mr. Jones, do you have any questions on that minority women's initiative? I've served with you for 6 years. I know what issues are important to you. So
that way, scratching this stuff.
Okay.
You can give us a little more insight.
Okay.
On the Morgan Stanley project.
Morgan Stanley, so they were engaged by the National Urban League to identify a city where they could deploy capital through some lobbying by the local Urban League president. Cleveland was selected. So it's a pool of capital that leverages our Grow Cuyahoga Fund. So it's actually going to be more than $2 million because there'll be funds that, as part of our existing fund, that will be committed to this effort. And so at the kickoff event, there was a woman who is a fashion designer, designs and manufactures clothing. So she got a $5,000 loan. So it's really a loan that has more flexible underwriting criteria. And so someone who may not have perfect credit, if they have strong character and are referred by someone and they agree to engage in a technical assistance component, they'll have access to these funds.
Was this through ECDI? Were they connected?
No.
Okay.
They will work with us because one of the things we're trying to do in 2017 is connect all of our capital intermediaries, have them work more closely together. So we have a meeting before the end of the year to accomplish that. So ECDI would complement this fund. That's the way to think about it.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This 2017 mid-cycle request is a partial down payment on our ambition to build out our vision of being an economic development center of innovation and excellence, focused on supporting our 59 client communities more strategically and effectively to grow their economies. The three key areas are, I can't get ahead of myself, but here are some of the additional highlights from the year, but you have them in front of you, so I won't, for the sake of time, go through some of these. I would just note that when I talked about going offensive in 2016,
Yeah, just please speak directly to the microphone.
when I talked about going offensive at my confirmation hearing in 2016, the bullets that really reflect that are the Executive Budish hosted during the RNC convention 15 national site selectors to market Cuyahoga County's economic assets to decision makers who influence Fortune 1000 companies to bring their business to places like Cuyahoga County. A month later, we had 3 of those site selectors come back to tour specific sites across the county. And so that is something that hasn't been done before that we did to take advantage of the RNC and the International Economic Development Conference, which was here in Cleveland for 3 days. Started hiring staff, and so we've hired who many of you have met to build out our workforce initiative, David Feinerman, who is our Workforce Innovation Director, and our newest team member is the Executive Assistant for the department, Sylvia Davis, that we recruited from the Cleveland Clinic. Let's see, I think everything else is pretty self-explanatory. So our 2016 mid-year request is really focused on 3 areas. 1, adding critical capacity to our economic and community development teams. We have also been working on our departmental strategic plan, and we've created, by reshuffling some responsibilities, a new strategic planning and research entity. So that will focus on metrics and dashboard for our department. We will continue to seek and identify top talent in 2017. 2, we've created a new vertical, the workforce vertical. That's led by David Fireman, who's working with GCP and other partners to stand up the county's new workforce program, Propel Cuyahoga. And then 3, spending time and investing money in this budget request to shore up our back office operations in the critical areas of loan portfolio execution, management, and servicing, cleaning up our website, contracts, and also we certainly need to give some consideration to enhancing our ability to deliver our brownfields capabilities, which, while it's not in this budget request, it's something that we want to try and find a way to do. So let me just go through. So the request includes $191,000 in personnel costs. That's just salaries. That is not benefits. What the budget office approved is our portfolio manager, marketing, some interns that are not reflected here, and then this CRM system, which is really a system that may integrate with the ERP system. But when we're going out talking to businesses, we don't want people tripping over one another. One thing the business community has said to us is that too many people are calling them, so this will be a system, for those of you who are familiar with it, where we can pull up if we're going out to Highland Software as one example. If the executive has made a call, the data and reporting from that conversation will be in this system, so I can look at it, and the vision is eventually to link into what GCP and others in the community are working. So again, a very modest request, and one that supports the executive's desire to transform the county government, and I'm confident that this will produce a positive return on investment for the county.
Okay, before we go to the next, were you done with that page?
Yes, sir.
Any questions on page 4? Mr. Schron.
The ERP integration, you said it may integrate with the enterprise resource planning software that we're bringing on board?
I believe there's a CRM component, so we're still trying to figure all that out, but we put that in there in the event that that's not successful. We've costed out that this is what it would take to tie into other systems external to the county who are doing business engagement and development.
Okay. We are going with Infor, as I believe, with our ERP system.
I'm not. You'd have to talk to.
Yeah, no, I believe really strongly that that's the correct point of view. And I know that they do have CRM software already as a component within Infor. I hope you're not telling this board that we're looking at a separate standalone. We just had a discussion yesterday about tax and the appraisal system being integrated because of the idea and the concepts make sense. I hope we're not going out on a third-party CRM package unrelated to Infor, because then we we aren't coordinating with software out there, so.
So I mentioned the integration, this is the cost, so no matter how we go, the expectation to have this system, we would contribute to the cost of that for this module for the Office of Development.
Okay, you're not looking at your own module? No. It's gonna be one that is being handed to us from IT side, from the ERP system?
That is the vision and one component of it, but again, we haven't made final decisions around how this would work.
Okay, well, I just caution us creating silos again around software and IT. I hope that we're not doing that, that we're coordinating back to universal systems that we're in the process of buying and installing. I see some head nodding from our staff, so hopefully that's what's being done out there in that respect, because it's when you start getting islands of software that we then spend money to integrate, and then when you want to move upward. So anyway, do you have a number as far as what this is? I don't see that on our sheet here as to what.
That's the $20,000, that's below the.
Oh, the 20K is the CRM. Okay, I apologize. And that's just the cost of the software, I assume? Do you have a brand that represents?
My team has costed out what it would take, and so this is the number that's been identified as necessary to create and operationalize a CRM system, whether it's part of the existing or, yeah.
Software only or installation, integration? Do you have any idea what that is? It's tough from a budget standpoint to know if $20,000 represents just the cost to write the package, to buy the package, or whether it is fully integrated and installed, because our CRM, our ERP is not even going to go live for another couple more years.
Any other questions? Yeah. Yes, Ms. Conwell and then Mr. Miller.
Director, you stated OBM has approved these additions that's before us. Are these additions already in your budget, or these are new requests?
These would be new requests that as part of approved, meaning as part of what's been presented to this body.
Okay, and what was the total dollar amount? Do you know?
Yeah, let me see if I can find that for you. It was some of the routine things that we put forward that are kind of renewed every year, where the OBM found a way to accommodate those. So we've got some past dues that have typically been in our budget that were part of the request. Yeah. I think it was something like $400,000, $500,000. Again, mainly built off of, again, these pass-throughs.
Okay, because the personnel cost is an additional $191K, and I would just assume, well, it's a new department, so. No, it's not really a new department, so there was some attrition. So I just don't understand. Are some of these, the 191 in personnel costs, is that hiring of new staff, or is that just an increase in their salaries? Or?
No, that's new staff, that would be new staff.
Okay, so there was no positions that they could move into already?
We have 2 vacancies at the moment, so again, we are understaffed at the moment, so assuming we fill those 4 traditional positions, these would be new positions that have been identified. So one is this portfolio manager that would manage our loan portfolio that we anticipate needing as a result of this consultant that's going to evaluate our loan portfolio and some of the shortfalls and weaknesses we have in that. And so at the moment, that's being someone that's dual-hatted. They weren't hired to do that job, but they're doing it as an additional workload. And so we would, the vision here is to have a full-time person manage our $46 million loan portfolio.
So to be clear, this 191 is going to be for two vacancies or more?
Yeah, it is 2 positions and then 2 interns.
Okay, and is there a reason why you didn't include the benefits cost for those full-time employees? I'm taking it they're full-time.
With the exception of the interns, yes. I'll defer that question to OBM in terms of the number.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it looks like Director is coming up to answer that question.
The benefits are included in the numbers that are in the update that you have.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Miller?
Mr. Chairman, Director, on this page, it says the 2016 requests include the 191K plus the 20K, so that's a total of 211. But you mentioned a $400,000 number. I'm wondering what's in the rest between the 211 and the 400,000.
So I'll defer to OBM to exact, but I'll give you kind of the high level. So in any budget process, we submit a budget to OBM. They reconcile that with the needs across the county. So they were able to accommodate annualized things like our contribution to the Film Commission and the Sports Commission, we're in that number as an example. And so that wasn't a new ask, but something that they were able to accommodate within our existing budget structure.
So you're actually asking for additional funding of only $211 million, and some other things have been worked into the structure.
We could take a vote on that. 211 million, yes, absolutely. I'm just kidding. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. My other question is if you could explain what you're going to be doing in the workforce area and how this interacts with the workforce system that we already have in place.
The workforce, there's three components to the workforce system or initiative. One is to create career pathways for our residents who receive public assistance. Two is to work with the workforce funders, and the executive and Ms. George Sobel Jordan are working on that to create more alignment so that there is more clarity on how to access and create a supply of labor and talent for our private sector. And the third one is this pipeline of creating just in time. So Mr. Feinerman will be focused on, from the career pathway standpoint, creating a cadre of support systems so that the WIB, for example, when an employer says, I need talent, the WIB has a pool of residents that are then hired for an initial job. The county's ambition is to move them to a living wage. And so we'll be doing that by giving them coaching and other services to help them get from that first job to multiple jobs. And so we'll have a small cadre of professionals that will help support that, in addition that partner with the support they're getting from our Human Services Division.
So, Mr. Chairman, Director, you're essentially implementing the executive's new workforce initiative, is that correct?
That resides here in the Office of Development, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I have a few questions. Yesterday in the Board of Control, we talked about a strategic plan that's overdue. When's the expected release date of that?
Strategic plan.
It's part of the 5-year economic development plan.
Oh. As soon as we can schedule, we'll come back and report to this body. So since the Economic Development Commission submitted to this body the 5-year strategic plan, I'll just remind everyone that that isn't the plan for this office, and that is a framework for the economic development assets of the county. So what we've done is each of the actions and steps that were in the plan have now been put into a matrix, and an owner has been identified. If you recall, I talked about that. All of that's outlined here cannot be done by the Office of Development. So there's partners, GCP, the port, the workforce board, the transportation system as an example. And so we are now creating a tactical plan for this office so we can present that in January in terms of the plan, but the framework is here in terms of the operationalization of that. So that's what's been happening since we presented that in August or September.
Yeah, I would recommend.
If our president so agrees of council, I would think it's appropriate to be bringing that into the Economic Development Committee to walk that through so everybody can get a full hearing as to what's going on. But that's obviously up to the direction of our president.
I have a couple questions. So the 191 in personnel costs, I'm just curious from a tactical perspective, we are in this budget reducing the $3 million additional payroll fund, whatever we decided to call that, by $1 million. Yet then we're going back and adding salaries, which would have come out of that fund. Why are we doing that? Why not just do a net amount? Let's say it's 191,000 less $1 million, so 819,000 thousand being reduced and go through the fiscal agenda to reappropriate this money? Why are we doing it this way?
Because the $1 million in the vacancy reserve is for already approved positions. These are new positions to the organization, so we thought it important to
Okay.
present them to council.
Okay, and I appreciate that. Just a question on this partial salary to cover the CDSG. We're talking about an 8-week evaluation program. What's with the? I know it coincides with the CDBG program. What are you looking at for 8 weeks?
So that, fair question. So that money, to execute that program, there's ongoing monitoring, compliance, contract management that happens throughout the year. So the evaluation is only the first stage of that. So once we review the applications, we'll award them to whoever's selected, and then you have to do the contracts. And so that is and we cannot bill the time that, because it's general fund money, devote to overseeing that to the general fund, to CDBG, which the other programs come out of. So we have to allocate that increased workload to the general fund. So that's how that is calculated.
Okay.
So it's a small piece of multiple people who have to do the contract compliance, monitoring, and execution.
So it's not to hire additional staff?
No, it's the existing staff who will be working on this new initiative.
So we're giving them salary increases?
No, it's allocating their salary for the work that they're focused on and doing, reviewing the CDSG process and the workload components to the general fund.
So how does that have a cash flow impact? If we're just appropriating already existing salaries from one functional component to another, how is there a cash flow impact?
Well, because you're reimbursing them for the time that they're spending on this new initiative.
So you're saying this is exchange time?
No.
All right, well, the director's coming up. I'm just trying to understand the mechanics of.
So the staff in question is paid 100%, or not 100%, but primarily through CDBG funds.
Okay.
So if she's not working on CDBG, we can't obviously charge her salary to that grant program. So there's no funding in the general fund budget to cover that time.
Okay, so it's time that's being.
We only budget for her partially in the general fund.
Okay, all right, I understand that example.
Sorry for my poor explanation.
That's okay, that's all right. The CRM system, so is that going to integrate with the ERP? Maybe I missed that, or maybe the question.
Yeah, I'll defer that to the Chief Technology Officer, but it's really to leverage the component of that within the ERP, but we do want to have, in terms of integration, I would like for it to connect to GCP and Team Neo, so that again, as these three entities, and it's something, again, we haven't traditionally done, as we're calling on businesses across the county, that we have a repository and record of what was said, what were the action items coming out of the conversations, et cetera.
Just as a question, I know that we issued a $25 million bond for the ERP project. Is there any opportunity for us, and we know that bids came in significantly less, is there any way for us to use the bond proceeds from the ERP project to offset a possibly adjoined software program? And you got a life.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Scott Rourke, Chief Information Officer. Related to this project, the CRM was not initially part or a significant part of the ERP project. It will take us a couple of years to actually get the ERP project in. What this department has looked for is they're looking for a solution that spans not just the county, but this is a customer relationship management system serving businesses and pursuits across other enterprises. So my vision of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, is something more like Jobs Ohio, Team Neo, GCP, and the municipalities, growth associations, and other pursuits all want to track business opportunities coming into the region and coordinate to make sure that they have coordinated plans. So right now, IT does not have robust plans to support this largely external CRM application. However, we do have plans later in the ERP process and do have some bonded funds and licensing over the next 3 years to have an integrated solution that'll serve the entire county, focusing primarily on this department once we're up and running, and then also Health and Human Services has a strong demand for that as well.
So the answer is not now. Mr. Schron?
Scott, as long as you took the mic, doesn't Infor have a CRM package that can be bundled or is bundled or capable, rather than going out and bringing a third-party package in even though it might be ahead of when you're gonna do your ERP installation, why get training and everybody working down there? Because you're gonna start installing data, and all these data points are gonna get dumped in. And if you go and switch to another CRM, 2 years or 3 years, there's gonna be transportation issues going back and forth. Why not just start with an Infor CRM right off the bat?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Generally speaking, the CRM is integrated to the foundational pieces. So this next year, we'll be building the foundational pieces of like all our clients, our citizens, our businesses. So there is a foundational piece. We might be able to accelerate it and do it in isolation. But right now in the ERP, we're very much focused on building the foundational pieces. And roughly in year 3, year 2, year 3-ish is when we would be looking at doing this at an enterprise level. But as far as doing what I'll call an ad hoc, getting the licensing and standing it up by itself where it's not integrated, that might be feasible. And this budget here could be used, and I certainly would encourage them, for the same reasons you mentioned, to use these resources towards an investment in Infor that we're going to get a big benefit from.
And I'm not trying to accelerate, the ERP takes priority over, I'm sorry, your CRM package, but why have your CRM package not already be planned 3 years down the road to be the package that actually is going to integrate when you get to that timeline? Because your data points, all this data dumping and creation is going to be something you're going to have to redo all over again. If you're running with Salesforce on one side and you end up going with Infor on the other, it just seems like it would be counterproductive for where we want to be 3 years from now.
Yeah, I can't speak to the lost, I agree with you. I can't speak to the lost opportunity cost of not having this solution in place for the next several years until the ERP is ready. But I agree with you that once we are ready, that is, our intention is to make that the enterprise standard.
Please sit down with them before we spend county money on one path would maybe ultimately be a path that works with where you want to be 3 years from now.
We will do.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, you can continue. I think we're on slide 5, page 5, last page.
Yeah, this is just kind of a high-level preview of kind of some of the focus areas for 2017. So I think, again, they're self-explanatory, so if there's any questions, I'd be happy to.
Okay. Any final questions for the director? Sorry. Mr. Schrein?
Earlier, Mr. Curry, you said that the site selection committee and the benefits of having the RNC here, then being able to roll directly into those conversations benefited us and will benefit us going forward. At least I think that's what I thought I heard.
That's the theory at the moment until we can.
Well, I agree with the theory. You get them here, and we're going to tell them how good we are and convince them. But that was driven significantly by the president of Destination Cleveland also being the president of the Committee on Arrangements, and because we had that group driving, are you concerned at all with what I've just read lately in the newspaper about funds being redirected from Destination Cleveland? Because that is one of our strong marketing brands for this region out there, and we as a county pick up, and it looks as though some of those funds are not going to be directly in their wheelhouse, potentially, if what I'm reading in the paper goes that way.
So I'm aware of that as the redirect, but I'm not versed on it, and would be premature for me to comment on it without having talked with the executive about it. But I would say, as a general matter, my personal opinion is again, as I said, we have a time and a moment now where we've got to really hit it. That's why we're being aggressive, and that's for economic development and community development activities. And so we shouldn't shoot ourselves in the foot by stopping momentum when we're getting just tremendous. I read something that my mom gave me about AARP, so they have a feature on Cleveland, just a great. So I mean, there's just a lot of good, and I think David has briefed you all, or you've heard about, when someone visits here, there's no bigger sales tool than someone coming here, visiting, and then going back and talking about Cleveland and Cuyahoga County. So,
but he was also be the one who'll tell you that he's got to get them here to get that ripple effect, to get that positive. And if we're removing millions and millions of dollars potentially from that voice, are you concerned as somebody who's heading up economic development? Sorry.
Let me, yeah,
You're on-
I
you're at the-
would.
You're at the microphone and the articles appeared in the paper.
Yeah,
This,
if someone asked me my opinion, I would say we should find a way to continue to invest in Destination Cleveland.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, Mr. Jones.
I see on the list the ombudsman. Can you give us a little more insight into what you mean by ombudsman?
So the county executive, 2 years ago, committed to having an ombudsman within the county, a business ombudsman. And so that would be someone in our office. So I listed that as, again, an ambition that maybe we'll have to wait till 18. But essentially, this would be someone full-time engaging the business community. So I do it as I have time. So this person's full-time job is to go out, proactively engage the business community, identify issues which should be resolved. And so we've met with a series of companies, the executive and I, collectively together and individually. And so invariably, there's issues that businesses express. That person is to identify, catalog, and resolve those issues. And so there's still our ambition to have someone like that on board playing that role.
All right, thank you.
All right, very good. Hearing no further questions, thank you for your presentation, and we will take your recommendations into consideration.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure. Next on the agenda is Human Resources. Director Dykes will come up and present new initiatives. This starts on page 44. You want to take it? Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good
Chairman,
afternoon. Thank you.
Members of council. I will supplement the information that you already have in your packet from Human Resources. And so what I thought I would do, which would be, I believe would be beneficial, is to expound a little bit on our ask. And our ask is a little over $1 million. Beyond where our budget is right now. And so I'm titling this as Transforming Government Needs Transformed Employees. I've spent the last 11 months really doing an assessment of talent, of human capital. And what I found is that around 65% of our operating budget is actually spent on compensation and benefits, salaries and benefits. But also, there's no direct correlation between our best performers and our compensation, how we could compensate. In addition, there's really an uncertainty when it comes to our employee strategy and our approach. What strategy are we using? What approach are we using when it comes to our employees? There's a huge deficiency in organizational employee development and training. There's no comprehensive approach for leadership development here at the county. There's no standard approach for recognizing employees and their accomplishments. Those are sort of the high levels there. And so we have to ask ourselves the question as an organization, have we invested in our people as much as we should? So the target here for Human Resources is to move us from where we are to that employer of choice. Why isn't the county recognized with the Cleveland Plain Dealers top workplaces? Why aren't we recognized with ERC's North Coast 99? We should be. And so as we look at being an employer of choice, there are a couple of things we need to focus on. One is our benefits, our wellness. We have to focus on that. Are our employees as well as they should be? Do our benefits align with our current employee population, which is multi-generational? Are we training and developing our employees? So we all know that we come into the organization and we have certain skills and certain competencies, but as things move forward, those skills and competencies should be enhanced. Are we developing great leaders? Are we rewarding and recognizing our employees? Are we creating an environment that's engaging and a culture that's engaging? These are all questions that we should be asking ourselves. And if we're not doing those things, what's the plan to do them? So as my ask, I'd like to break it down into the dollar amount, which is in your packages. In 2017, I'd like to commit $75,000 to employee recognition and engagement.
So if I can interrupt, we're talking about this on page 47 and 48, the documents that look like this, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so page 47 and 48, the 75,000 director's speaking of are on page 77, items 3, 4, and 5.
Yes. Focusing on Employee Services Award ceremony. So I made a recommendation to Armin. Why are we not celebrating those employees that have dedicated so many years to us? Why aren't we having a modest dinner to recognize those employees that have been with us 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years? Why aren't we handing them a certificate saying thank you for your service? Monthly, quarterly recognitions. Why don't we go out and recognize those employees that are providing all of those wonderful services to our citizens, to our customers, and even to some of our employees? What are we doing about team building? Lunch and learns, things of that sort. What about retirement, preparing our employees for retirement? Some people may say, well, you know, that's what PRS does. Well, no, that's not. There's a lot more to retirement than just getting your check from PRS. How are people making the transition? Are they truly prepared for the retirement? I floated out there to our executive, what about town hall meetings with you, Sharon, some of the executives, and our employees? Why are we not getting out there regularly? So all a part of that $75,000, that's a part of that ask. As we look at the organizational development and training, I asked for $100,000 to look at organizational design. So some of our departments are similarly structured to what they were 5, 10, 15 years ago. Now, you may say, well, that should be easy. People should be able to figure out what they need. It's not that easy. As priorities change, as strategies change, we really need to support our directors and our chiefs in how they design and redesign their structures for the department. There's an ask for $100,000 as it relates to general employee training. We had some conversation at one of the at the subcommittee this morning on training like crucial conversation, process improvement. Training at least 3,000 of our employees on those areas. Project management training, something that's sorely needed in this organization. I asked for $100,000 to train 2,500 employees on project management. And lastly, we have around 722 supervisors in this organization. We talked this morning, what training do we provide our supervisors once they're here? A lot of people may say, well, they should come here with the training, but we know that that doesn't usually happen. High-performing organizations, they typically have supervisory series, so supervisors can sharpen up their skills, and so they can be better prepared for what they're doing now and also for future opportunities. The last big ask that I want to talk about is the performance management, developing a performance management system. since I've come here, there is not a systematic way to evaluate employees' performance. We have a couple of versions, but it's not across the board. And so as a result, I think it's important, as Sharon has told you, we've developed our mission, our vision, our core values, and we should figure out a way of how to measure employees based on those things that we developed and our expectations for how their behaviors should be. In 2017, we look at working with a consultant to develop the performance management system and training. We will also go ahead and train, and in 2018, rolling out that performance management system, looking towards 2020, attaching performance or pay for performance to that system. Now, as we talked, and I've talked to Councilwoman Conwell a couple of times over the last few days, and she asked me to do a couple of things. She asked me to prioritize, and then she also asked me, she didn't use these words, but I'll use it, what can you cut out? And so one of the things that I looked at was we asked for $100,000 in temporary agency funds to support those positions that we have to fill on a temporary basis. And so as I told the committee this morning that I'm going to pull that back and not ask for that $100,000. So what's the long term and the ROI on all of this? This under $1 million that I'm asking for in 2017 is a small piece of the larger picture. This development of employees, this engagement of employees, engaging employees, really is a 5-year, 6-year plan. The total cost estimate is probably anywhere between $6 to $8 million total, but we're asking for a little under $1 million in 2017. So what's the ROI on engaging employees? Well, there's enough data out there that says that when you engage employees and you engage them properly, there's a 37% lower absenteeism rate. When you engage employees and you engage them properly, there's typically anywhere between a 50 to a 60% lower turnover rate, 10% higher customer metric rate, and 21% higher productivity. Employees want to be engaged. What's the ROI on the training? There's a lot of data out there too that says that it will definitely increase job satisfaction, increase employees' morale. It will reduce, again, turnover, and it will also enhance the organization's image. So I don't ask for these things and this money just as a flyby. I believe that as we have transformed the government, and I think we've done a good job at that, but I think what we've done is we've left our employees behind. As I've engaged with supervisors and I've engaged with employees, there is a deficiency in training. There's a deficiency in managerial competencies. And it's one thing that I'd like to address in 2017. I'm open to any questions you may have.
Any questions for the director? Ms. Simon?
Thank you. I just want to understand, your ask is about $1 million. How much of this is for paid consultants for 2017?
For the organizational development and training, which totaled $600,000, the bulk of that is for paid consultant, one time for 2017.
What's the remaining 400,000? That's not for consultants?
So let me go back to that page. The $75,000 that I spoke about, The majority of that is on us. We will do that in-house. And that was the employee engagement and recognition and engagement. The majority of that we'll do in-house. And actually, no, the rest of it is for consultants.
So most of
Even the
this,
performance management is for consultants.
okay, so the majority of this is for paid consultants?
Yes.
Almost $1 million. What have you done to date to identify the deficiencies you speak of?
We've done some surveys. And we actually did a survey, I believe it was late last week, and just asking supervisors about their training that they have received, how prepared do they believe they are so far as supervising and competencies as it relates to supervising. We have a lot of data as it relates to discipline. And we see a common theme a lot of times when it comes to the supervisors and their discipline, how they're communicating with employees, how they're not effectively communicating with employees, if they truly understand what they're supposed to do when it comes to supervisory responsibilities.
Okay, so this was last week? I'm sorry, did I hear you say last week?
We did a survey last week.
Okay.
And we also have a lot of data as it relates to discipline.
I'd like to see all this data that you're referencing. And the survey is part of the basis upon which you're seeking $1 million in consulting fees, in part?
The survey is a part of that, yes.
Okay.
We're trying to put together several data points so we can support what our ask is.
So how much have you spent since you've been here on consulting fees in this department?
I don't believe any.
Zero?
Yeah, I don't believe any.
How many people have been hired since you've been here?
Oh, I don't have that number. I can find that out for you.
You can get that, right?
Yeah.
I know we've lost some people and you needed to restore the office. I understand that. But I'd like to see who's been hired and the posting of those jobs.
You would like to see the actual postings?
Yes.
Okay.
In terms of the $75,000 for employees recognition, is that including snacks and things like that,
It would be.
trophies?
Yes.
I just want to say, after I get this data, I think if we're spending $1 million on consultants and we envision continuing that, you said it's a 5-year, this is just a first part of what you envision, correct?
Yes.
This council person would rather look at how we can compensate employees, maybe with greater salaries, rather than spending it on consultants to give them snacks. I think what they probably would be looking at is an enhanced payment package for their salaries. But that's just my opinion. I'm open to this, but I want to see how we could use that money for the employees directly rather than paying consultants and crackers.
Okay, any other questions? I have a question.
Okay.
Your coordination with the PRC, it appears some of the ask looks like it could be PRC-related initiatives, training, organizational consultants, things like that. What type of communication coordination have you had with them?
We haven't had much coordination. During one of our meetings, I believe it was yesterday or last week, Councilwoman Conwell said that the PRC was working on some things like the performance management and total rewards, but I think they're doing a presentation on that, and I haven't seen that yet, so I'm not sure exactly what they're doing, but we will reach out to the PRC to see how we can interlink.
This has been, seems like a consistent battle over the last 6 years with HR and PRC and not coordinating. I need to be convinced that the request isn't duplicative. I've been asking for training and development from day one. I think it's important. I understand everything you're saying, but I want to make sure that the services are not being duplicated between agencies, or one agency is doing the work that another is charged with doing. And my charter is down at my station. I'm going to take a look at PRC charter mandated obligations versus HR and see if there's an overlap to justify this.
Okay.
Which is part of our role, right? We question, review, and verify the request. So it's not outside our purview. I just want to make sure we're not creating an environment that fosters conflict as opposed to fostering collaboration. Okay, Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chairman, Director, first of all, I want to say publicly the same thing that I said this morning, that I like your approach, and I believe that our executive shares it, to be interested in our employees and want to create a positive working environment. I think under the prior administration there was a little bit of wanting our employees to be afraid of us as opposed to feeling that this is a good and positive place to work. So I like the direction, and I also say that I'm just totally aware that to be on the line taking the boss's direction and doing a job and even maybe innovating a little bit, it's an entirely different thing from being a supervisor and having a number of people that you got to be aware of what you're doing plus what each of them are doing at the same time, and that's not a transition that we can just assume is going to happen by itself just because someone was good at doing their particular job. So I appreciate your focus on supervisory training. Keying off on what Ms. Simon said about the consultants, I would like to just bring to your attention the model that we successfully used in Cuyahoga County to conduct a very successful disparity study for about 1/3 of the cost that other people were paying, and yes, we used a couple of consultants, but we also did a lot of the data collection and a lot of the work in-house, and the consultants and the in-house people worked together very effectively as opposed to the consultants doing all of it. And we should take a look at whether we could employ that concept. And you know, I think, for example, you know, I totally agree about the performance management. That's a very technical area, and I don't doubt that we need outside consulting on that. But I think when it comes to basic supervisory training, I think that's the basic principles are not rocket science, and I think that we could easily do that with a little bit of consulting and a lot of in-house, you know. So I just throw that out there for your consideration, that we might be able to get more bang for the buck if we think about how we can merge an effective and very strategic use of a limited amount of consulting along with our own internal resources to get more value. Thank you.
Okay. I've got a copy of the charter language here. I don't know what the word ensure means in the charter. Because if ensure means that the charter, that the PRC has the responsibility, it says it has the responsibility for training and management of personnel practices, training employees in job functions, training for quality management. Does ensure mean, I looked at law director, does that mean that they follow existing practices, or they design, develop, create, implement, and monitor practice? What isn't, and maybe putting on the spot here, we're going to meet next Tuesday, so I'm not asking for a response, but I think it's germane to the request of the human resource director as to what the role of the PRC is. And so I'm not asking now, but I'm asking, because I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm asking to understand what the charter interpretation of ensure means, because it may mean design, develop, administer, manage evaluate, or it might just mean evaluate. I don't know. Ensure is such a vague word, in my opinion. But so if you can look into that, I'd appreciate it. Any other questions? Yeah, Ms. Simon.
Just a clarification, the only information I was looking for, Director, was just for HR department, not countywide. So the hires, I asked you for a list of the hires since you've been there.
Just in the HR department.
Just your department, because that's all we're looking at. So no need to scramble countywide. Thank you.
And just so I'm clear, do you also want the people that have left to turnover?
I know there's been a turnover.
Okay, so you want both? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, any further questions? Yeah, Ms. Byrne.
Somewhat to that point is there with the turnover and the new hires, the training is going to be universal throughout the county.
Yes.
But I guess the question I have is each department varies substantially. I mean, from fiscal to HHS to Department of Children and Family Services. So would the consultants be teaching individual departments, or would this be a universal training for every supervisor to follow? I guess that's part of the question or part of the answer that I'm not clear on.
Yes, and thank you for your question. This will be a universal training for all supervisors. So we develop some core competencies as an organization. We're also going to develop some managerial competencies. And we expect our employees and our supervisors to behave accordingly. So how they behave, what that should look like, all of that is a part of that. There are a couple of key areas in which all supervisors should have training in. Strategic thinking, innovation. So the best ways to communicate. So it doesn't matter what department you're in. That should be across the board throughout the organization. And that is part of the system-wide training.
The other question that was from our previous meeting, the performance evaluation, that would be applicable the same with varying departments having varying performances, but having an overall scale. I guess, can you elaborate a little bit more with the performance evaluation component?
Yes, and so that is the same mindset. So let me give you an example. When I was at the sewer district, we had one performance review for all non-union employee. What it was the development of goals. They developed goals at the beginning of the year. And then our employees were evaluated based on those goals and if they accomplished those goals at the end of the year. But they also were evaluated on the core competencies that they should have had throughout the organization. Leaders were evaluated on leadership competencies. And a couple of other things. So that went uniform throughout the organization. Typically, that's how system-wide performance reviews look like.
And with regards to Councilwoman Simon's question with the survey, who designed the survey? Was that something?
We did in-house.
Okay. All right, and just how many questions did the survey consist of?
I don't have that. It was under 10 questions. We were trying to target specific areas.
Okay, and then the other thing that you mentioned was that the data you collected, there was a universal theme with some of the supervisors, and I'm under the impression that it was a communication style that might have been the key theme.
So that is one of the key themes as it relates to our disciplined history. And what we have found when we have meetings with employees, that it is the communication style that really rises to the top.
And I guess my last point in question or comment would be, because we are such a large organization, I know you come from a fairly large organization, but this one being larger, the consultant component's value would be in executing the training in a more timely fashion, because I guess I feel like, and maybe some members of the body feel like, there has to be some people in the organization that have this knowledge and have the ability to train, but is it not to the level or speed that you would like for it to see, that you are seeking the consultants to execute some of this?
So there's two components in which we want this consultant engaged. One is developing whatever the program is. Because their database is so large, they've done it in so many organizations, complex organizations, whether it be private or government or nonprofit, they bring a wealth of knowledge to developing whatever we're going to roll out. That's one. Two, it's the training. We do have a lot of employees, and it would behoove us to train in short fashion instead of spreading it out for 2 years or 3 years. And so those are the two components that the consultant would be providing. And as I said this morning after the presentation this morning, after 2017, those particular areas that's in my ask, we won't need a consultant because then it would be one-on-one training, small group training, and it won't be as vast as it will at the initial.
Yeah, Ms. Simon?
Sorry, have we done an assessment of what departments already have training initiatives? Because I know that certain departments already have training going on, and have we formally assessed what we have?
We have done some of that assessment. We haven't sent a survey out to all of our directors. For example, HHS, and you asked this question this morning, I was able to get some information. They spend about $400,000 annually in training, but it's specifically for HHS. Okay, we in HR, our budget, from what I understand from staff, was about $40,000 system-wide training. That was our budget for 2016.
So we would like the data of what's existing, so we make sure there's no redundancies with the ask. So you're sending out a second survey?
We're going to send out quite a few surveys.
Okay, so that will help inform us, I think, looking at what's already in existence. And the chief information officer who we had was doing some Lean Sigma training, I thought. Wasn't that what that job was supposed to be, to help train and do some of this? What's going to happen with that position?
The lean methods that the chief innovation officer is doing was actually through a grant from, and Tri-C was teaching it.
But we hired somebody to do that training, to oversee that training with.
To oversee it, yes, but we used a grant from Tri-C, and the Tri-C, actually our employees went to Tri-C to receive some of that training.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Are we going to fill that position to start to oversee the training? Is that?
We're working on it.
So your plan with this money with the consultant is to work in concert with that position also?
Absolutely. We worked with the former chief innovation officer on that training, actually.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Ms. Conwell?
Through the chair to the director, one question I didn't ask was earlier today in regards to the consultants. How does that, if we were to go ahead with your ask, how would that look as far as rolling out bidding and things of that nature for the various consultants? Or do you have consultants already in mind?
Oh, no. We would go through the regular procurement process.
And
I'm sorry.
And just not to.
You took a breath, and I just tried to.
Just because we've talked so much on this issue, but not to be a broken record, I guess I have to say it again on the record that, a lot of this could be handled if we saw that plan. And so I'm going to have to be that broken record again. If we're talking about 10 million in the next 5 years, if the council would see that plan and what that looked like, we could be more amenable to some of these asks because we would know how that was going to lead into something else. I stated earlier, we did it with IT when we first started. We knew it was a $32 million budget, and every year we made sure that we put enough money in so that could grow and we could get to the end goal that we all want. My other statement was, I've been thinking of some new things that I'll discuss with my colleagues when we talk about this budget, but why roll out in 2017? I heard the Chief of Staff's passion for that and your passion for that, but not in 2018. Because there's some other intricate things that Councilman Greenspan mentioned, that I had mentioned earlier, the roles of the PRC and the HR. We haven't established those yet. So we don't want to shut, I don't want to shut, let me speak for myself, any of this down, but there's still some issues that I would like to see mended or fixed or established or completed, especially the plan, before we think about really introducing more money when we don't know the direction that we're going. And this is a very, very touchy subject because I am all about the employees getting better, what they deserve, being recognized. I am one of their main advocates, me and Councilman Gallagher, so this is very hard for me to say, but there's some things that I feel that we could really hunker down in the remaining of this year, which is pretty much holiday in the first 6 months, and then maybe really look at something in the end of 2017, if we all did our parts. And that's just coming from me. See, I have other colleagues that.
Mr. Gallagher, your name was mentioned. You have 30 seconds to, wrong format, sorry. Just one final question. Question number one in the questions that were submitted to the administration had to do with how much is currently spent countywide executive agencies for training and employee development. Between now, not asking for an answer now, between now and next Tuesday, could you research that information and find out? Any further questions? Mr. Germana.
Yeah, the one question I have, and I sat through this morning. I'm just wondering if any of these consultants will help direct to find out if we have the wrong people in supervision. I mean, just assuming there's some managers and supervisors that shouldn't be there, and you try to train them if they're not the right person. Is any of this going to be able to rate the competency of the supervisors and managers that we have?
Excellent question. Typically, when you roll out supervisory training, there is a survey that all supervisors or people that are in that training, they must take. And as a result, it will tell you what their appetite is for the general competencies that a supervisor should have. So that will be a part, I would imagine. Again, we haven't sent this out for bid yet, but I would imagine that would be a part of this, yes.
I guess the other thing, since what I brought up this morning, I think I want to bring up again today, tonight, or this afternoon, and that is, it's not all about money. If you ever known anybody that comes home from work and drinks and cries and have bad days, it's not about money, it's about well-run organization. And I think that's important, because it's just not money to keep people satisfied. And I think that's important. We want to have good morale and have a good place to work with competency and well-run rules and management. And I think I feel very strongly about that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. No further questions? All right, thank you. You've got some homework to do. Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is the Personnel Review Commission. If the director would come forward. She'll be presenting new initiatives that are not included in the recommended budget. They're on page 49 of our agenda. Just to remind council, we have two more presentations in addition to this one before we hit the Metro Health
Mr. Chairman? Might I ask a question before the next presenter starts?
Before the prosecutor's office or before?
Before this presentation?
Yes, go ahead.
Again, in the spirit of Councilman Conwell's question, I had a similar question regarding the Public Works Department. I mean, we're doing this in the middle of the 2-year process, so the reality is we're going to have to take money from one department to fund something else. And these are all worthy projects, I'm assuming, but we also have to take money from somewhere else. As I just reviewed some of them, I look at the $1.4 million in public works. It says capital improvement, so I assume that's for buildings, but would it mean road work? Maybe Maggie's the appropriate person to ask, but would that mean road work? And if so, does that push back road projects that are already in place?
Well, to that specifically, we asked the question of the Director
Maggie.
Dever, and the response was it was for maintenance of 3 county-owned buildings, so it was not road projects.
No road work?
No.
Okay.
Okay, Director.
Can you hear me? Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. The PRC appreciates this. We understand and are considerate of the fact that the county is facing some fiscal pressures next year, and we appreciate that there are cuts being discussed. So even more so, that's why we appreciate the opportunity to come before you today. We're here to propose a new initiative, a total rewards policy, which is essentially being driven by a couple of pieces of momentum, if you will. The first is we are remaining ever mindful of our charter responsibilities to ensure pay equity and to administer an employment system that's based on merit and fitness, which we understand does not mean longevity-based. Secondly, and probably more importantly, Councilwoman Conwell and I have continued our dialogue about pay equity for several years now. And after the Gallagher study was completed in 2014 and those recommendations were presented to Council, she asked us to develop a model that we thought could work for our employees, but could also work as a potential model for the rest of the county. As she mentioned, this has always been sort of a delicate dance that's gone on between our agency and the HR department, but because we were integrally involved in that original pay equity study, we did want to continue that momentum and those follow-through up on those recommendations. So that is that's a big reason why we're here in front of you today, mid-cycle in this budget. The other thing, as a side note, we did just finish a several-month process to revisit our strategic planning efforts. We initially developed a plan in 2013 that went through 2016. We did identify pay equity as one of our main priorities for the commission at that time, and so this is in follow-up to that identification of that issue in that matter. We're proposing a total rewards policy. We recognize that compensation as a practice is really a comprehensive, we were proposing a comprehensive model. This is something that includes benefits, components of the work life that employees enjoy, and pay, compensation. We didn't have room to write compensation, so we wrote pay here. But basically, the premise here is that we're not here just talking about pay, except to the extent that the benefits that the PRC employees receive are governed and dictated by the county executive. So we don't have any control over that. The work-life things are a little bit more nebulous and difficult to define. So we're not talking about those in this policy. We're really looking to put some structure into place to guide the decisions that the commission makes about compensation. We have a couple policy objectives. First, this is based on a philosophy. Our goal is to recruit, retain, develop, and reward an exceptional workforce. We are using the term target rate in here, and the reason we do that, rather than the term of midpoint, is because the county's classification, compensation system for classified employees has not been updated with relevance to the market since 2001. So we know that we're working with midpoints that are probably 15 years old. We don't know how relevant they are. We know that we've been able to recruit some employees in these existing classifications, but we are mindful of the fact that we need to look at what we're looking at in the market as relevant data. We're shooting for a practice that ensures our competent employees get within 10% of those target rates. The reason that is because the county's benefits program remains very generous, even with some of the modifications that have been made over time. We feel like we can lag the market a little bit with our compensation levels simply because those benefits are still generous, relatively so in the market. So it puts us in a good position to compete. Very important to some of our millennial employees, I might add. We're also looking to achieve consistency and flexibility in internal and external equity. These were key recommendations that came out of the Gallagher study to implement procedures like standardized job descriptions, continued use of the Archer system to conduct a job evaluation analysis of every position so that they're compared across the organization to ensure some internal consistency. Also, we have included some recommendations about what we'd like to do to ensure our rates are relevant to the local market. And finally, okay, I'm sorry.
I was going to, if I can interact, just the law director again. Under philosophy, recruit, retain, develop, reward exceptional performance almost seems redundant to what the director of human resources was stating. So this definition is we need to, everybody's trying to do good work. I'm not disputing that, but I want to make sure we're all doing one work.
Appreciate
Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, that's okay. And finally, and most importantly, probably to link pay to merit and fitness, which we continue to tell you that we interpret as qualifications and performance. There are three primary components in what we're proposing today. The initial pay, and I have to apologize because this addendum did not make it into your packet, so we'll send this electronically. Hopefully a member of my staff is watching and they can do that while we're speaking so you could get this. But basically what we've done is develop a simple grid that looked at every job that we have at the PRC and the minimum requirements for that position. And what we've identified as a parameter on that is that in those cases where people come into those positions and they're minimally qualified, we can recommend a salary for them up to 75% of whatever that target rate is. If they exceed those minimum qualifications, then they can go all the way up to the target rate. But we do not want to, we don't believe that we need a practice to bring people above that target rate when the county's benefits plan is so generous. That's the first main component. The second one is we have a number of procedures in here that are governing promotions, demotions, transfers, those typical kinds of employee events that occur during the course of an employee life cycle. And our primary goal with all of that was to ensure that our current employees are treated as well as somebody coming into the organization from outside of the organization. So we really were mindful when we wrote that language about those policy components to keep that goal in the forefront. And lastly, a pay for performance piece, which we think is imperative to have the merit and fitness-based pay system. This is what I just basically explained to you, that our initial pay decisions, our recommendations are going to be if you're minimally qualified, we can recommend a salary up to 75% of the target rate. If you're exceptionally qualified, we would have that flexibility to go up to 100% of that target rate. And the pay for performance guidelines are relatively simple. We've included in your packets that chart. It's a little bit more complex than what you have here on the screen today. But essentially, we've put the COLA in there, even though that's not typically what we would consider as a pay for performance. But it is an annual adjustment that's been offered for employees for the past few years. We've included it that if the executive were to award it, the PRC would award it. We do that annually if that's done, and we do that through a resolution of the board of the commission, so they take separate action to ensure that that happens. And then beyond that, we're proposing a performance rating scale. We're currently using a 5-point scale in our performance evaluation system. It's a system that the county was using prior to the current administration. We've continued to use it all this time. And basically, if an employee does not meet expectations, we would not expect that they would get an increase. They should not move in their pay grade. In fact, they should be on a PIP. They should be on a performance improvement plan or moving along. Secondly, the meets expectations level. If a person is doing the job that we've hired them to do and they're below their target rate, we would propose that they be allowed to move up the equivalent of one pay step in that pay grade. If they're exceeding their expectations, we would ask that you approve this policy where they could move up to 1-step increase or a bonus, depending on where the employee is in the grade. The reason that we've rolled this bonus in here, and it's at the employee's discretion, you'll note in this charter, we have a lot of millennial employees, and some of them are saving money to buy houses and things like that. Periodically, they're more interested in a bonus than they are a salary increase. Now, some of us further along in our careers have a difficult time understanding that, but that's the reality of the workplace, and we've got multi-generations in our workforce, so we're trying to tailor this to meet as many needs of those different generations as we can. And then in those cases where people substantially exceed expectations, and in this case, they have to earn more than 75% of the points that are available through their performance evaluation, we would ask that you support a policy where they could get up to a one-step increase and a bonus up to an additional step, or they could take the whole thing in a bonus, depending on where they are in their pay grade. So this is essentially the system that we're proposing. It's laid out in 8 pages, I think, in front of you. In a detailed policy. I'm happy to answer any questions, and again, thank you for the opportunity to present.
Ms. Simon.
Thank you. Have you had an opportunity to discuss what your budget plans are with Director Dykes and what his vision is? Because it appears that a lot of this is overlapping. I know we're looking at the charter. That's an overriding question. But are you able to communicate about these objectives and how you're each asking for money to achieve the same goals?
We brought this up in a conversation that we had with the director a couple of weeks ago. I think at the time our sense was they indicated that they have a pretty grand plan to get a number of different components in place in the HR department. And they indicated to us at that time that they really wanted to wait until 2019 or 2020 to do the pay for performance piece. And I don't want to speak on Doug's behalf, so stop me if you want to resort to him as a resource here. But when we heard that, and we're still very mindful of Councilwoman's request to get something out to her in a timely manner, so we decided not to wait. We have, we're almost at the point that we're fully staffed at the PRC. We have some really exceptional people working over there. We think it's important that we have a mechanism in place to retain them, and so that was part of our motivation as well.
Okay, any further questions? Mr. Schron and Miller.
When you're doing surveying or finding what fits, because you said it strikes you as unusual that somebody would want a bonus depending on where they were versus that, and I think the data is starting to show that a millennial sometimes only wants to be in any job for 3 to 5 years, and
Right.
so the pay raise is not as relevant as a bonus is, because one is a short-term burst and the other is career. And if you never expect that this career is going to be more than 3 to 5 years, we should not be shocked, I think, and we should gear our programs and our personnel philosophy around where our workforce is going to be trending to. And so I just think we need to be open-minded, not to what we think is going to be logical for perhaps maybe the baby boomer generation, or but the millennials are probably going to be going a different path, and so I think we need to factor that in as we gather our data points.
I agree.
Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Kaczynski, in your pay for performance guidelines, if someone did not meet expectations, would they still be eligible for a COLA if it was offered, or would they not receive any?
We have
anything?
not made that distinction in the past. We would certainly entertain that if that was a suggestion from this committee. I mean, frankly, so we're talking about the results of an annual performance appraisal driving these decisions. Somebody who's not meeting expectations is going to be in an active dialogue about their performance long before it gets to this point.
And
trust me.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Kaczynski, how much money are you asking for us from us in the 2017 budget?
We're asking for $26,000. That's about 2.5%, and I'll give you some insight into how we came up with that. So all of our employees are below the midpoint, with the exception of one who I think is currently at the midpoint in the existing pay grade. We looked at the average of the step increases in every grade in that lower half of the pay scale, and it comes out to about 2.4, 2.5. We estimated that on average, that's what we would be offering. That's what it would cost us to implement this program. Now, obviously, not everybody's going to get an increase, and some are going to get more than that, but we're looking at about 2.5% of the 1 point, I think it's our total salaries for 2017 is $1,064,000 total for full-time employees.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Conwell.
I just want to answer Councilwoman Simon's question. You know, it was a long period that we did not have an HR director, so we felt, me and Rebecca, that we should move forward, and that whoever came came aboard, that hopefully they would be willing to look at and respect the work that they did, and let's sit down and discuss it. So Doug, Director Dykes did mention earlier that, because in our meeting on Monday, I had suggested that he take a look at what you guys, it doesn't mean that they necessarily have to do it, but now that we're faced with all these consultant fees, you know, it's best to really collaborate and look at what you guys have presented and flesh that out a little bit. So if I forgot to email you, please send it to him.
It's okay.
All right.
All right, anything else? Nothing, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Next on the agenda is the prosecutor's office. Dave Raines will be presenting new initiatives and one IT initiative that's not in the recommended budget.
Thank you, Council. I'm representing the prosecutor's office until the end of December. Then there's a transition that's going to take place. We've got two decision issues in front of you, one of which, as I understand it, made the recommended budget, one of which did not. The first one is the DNA Rape Kit Task Force request. You'll recall that task force was initiated back in 2013, a very cooperative effort. The intent then was to look at 4,000 plus backlog cases of untested rape kits in Cleveland. The commitment was to investigate 2,000 cases by 2016. As of now, 2,400 cases have been investigated. Of those cases, almost 600 defendants have been indicted, and the task force has a 93% conviction rate of those cases. During the course of the last couple of years, additional cases were discovered, over 2,000 cases discovered, so now there's about a total of 6,600, 6,700 cases that need to be investigated. What we'd like to do, we went out and got a grant to continue the task force support. That grant takes us into 2022, November of 2022, based upon the way the investigations are being conducted. What we're looking for is continued support by the council to allow us to bring that time frame back to April of 2021. That would reduce the time frame by a year and a half.
Okay, thank you. This is on page 50.
Right. We've got Rick Bell, the chief of the Special Investigation Division here, if you have any specific questions about the project. But at least from my perspective, this is a project that has not only hit its target, but surpassed them. And the results of the investigations that have taken place have been reported in the media. These individuals are taken off the streets. They tend to be involved in more crimes than just rapes, and the economic impact is pretty significant.
Okay. Any questions on this item? Mr. Miller, Ms. Conwell, Ms. Simon.
I have just one question, and it's as to whether you feel that we have found all or substantially all of the rape kits that are out there, or do we think there's still more to be discovered?
That's a good question.
Thank you, members of council. Rick Bell. The answer is yes. We think we have found all of them. There's a mandatory scheme that was put into place by the state of Ohio, the legislature, that began in March of 2016. All police departments across the state must turn in all of their kits. They were given a full year. In March of 2016, this past year, supposedly all of the different police chiefs signed off that they had sent their rape kits. So we know that in Cleveland, and also in the whole Cuyahoga County area, for this backlog project, 1993 through 2009, that we have 6,697 rape kits that must be tested and also investigated. All of the tests, as you've heard last week, are completed. So testing is done. So we know what our universe is, and that's how we can develop our projection for you. We've got a finite number, so we know that this is a project that must be completed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Conwell?
And how does that look going forward? So you said we're caught up on just the testing or all the, so I'm
yes,
just
so-
wondering how you're gonna, what would be the ask, I guess, in moving forward and making sure that you stay current?
The ask is if you have your packets with you, and I know that there's a small, medium, and large explanation there, but there's a projection sheet that kind of explains what we have with 22 investigators versus what we could accomplish with the 30 investigators, the full team. So the The numbers went up. The rape kits were only to be 2,000. There's actually 6,697. So the ask is for this additional amount. It's to continue the amount that's already been awarded by this council. You had given us $600,000 a year for a 2.5-year period to do the 2,000 rape kits. We surpassed that. We've completed 2,400, 2,600 is where we're at right now. And now the ask is to continue to finish the rest of those up through the 6,697. So we believe that that will be a 4-year period. This is a 1-year ask where we would come back each year. It's a $600,000 ask. Your money goes through or up to March 15th or so of this year. So for this year, it's only $400,000+ for 2017 coming up. Then after that, each year, it's a $600,000 to complete the project. That will take us up through the 2021 that we discussed.
Okay, so the current funding goes to March 2017. When you said you would just do the ask on a year, so that's not a full year. So from March to December of 2017, what would that cost be?
We estimate that, Council, we estimate that to be around a little over $400,000. And then after that, the annualized cost would be about $600,000 for the additional 8 investigators.
Okay, and a question might be off topic a little bit, but the cases that were prosecuted, did they include utilizing the victims?
Absolutely. You have victim advocates, and one of the positions that we would fill are the victim advocates. We can't do this work without the victim advocates. The victim advocates are assigned at the same time that the detectives are assigned. So the victim advocates and the detectives strategically decide on any given case how the victims will be notified. Sometimes that's face-to-face, and we include a safety protocol to make sure our advocates are safe during that process. Then they stay with them throughout the complete process and work directly with Rape Crisis, who's a partner with us at all of our task force meetings. So not only do we advocate for them during the investigation and prosecution process, but then we refer them for counseling afterwards.
Okay, because I remember I'm going back to when Prosecutor McKenty came before us and asked initially for this funding. There was Rape Crisis here, and so my question or my comment, that's good for the victims that want to prosecute, but where are we on for the victims that do not want to go forward with that? At that time, I think there was a testimony that we were prosecuting the victims that did not.
No, that's not the case.
Okay.
We have a specific policy within our office to not prosecute. I think what you're referring to is whether or not victims are forced to come to court. We have a policy not to do that. We will not issue arrest warrants for our victims on these cases to place them in harm's way, to bring them to court. Our advocates work with the victims throughout the process, and they give them many opportunities to determine whether or not they wish to go forward and proceed with the cases. And we work with them. Sometimes we'll have many victims on a given case. Many of our cases, 26% of the cases indicted so far, are serial rapists. That's why we feel so very strong about this project. And so sometimes we'll have 2, 3, 4. One individual has 17 victims. So there's a lot of work that has to take place. And oftentimes when other victims know that there are victims and they're not the only ones, they wish to come back, and we give them that opportunity to change their mind, and we prosecute those cases. But never will we ever arrest a victim or ever prosecute them in these situations.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Simon.
Thank you. So council already budgeted for the current positions that you're seeking to maintain. Because I'm looking at some of the information in the packet. It said this additional budget request is for maintaining current positions, and I thought we already budgeted for those positions originally when the request came to us.
They were budgeted for a certain period of time. So you have the certain period of time being the 2.5 years, and then after that, they're not employed anymore. Some of them we've been able to pick up by using the Department of Justice money. We went and we asked for a grant for the Department of Justice. So we'll be able to maintain most of them. We also got money from the Attorney General's office, and that money is ending in January 1st of the 2017. So in order for us to go from 22 investigators to the full 30 investigators, in order to complete the project, we'll need to have this money.
What happens when the sun sets in 4 years? Are you intending to decrease the budget then that we are funding for these investigators?
That's the intent, yes.
And so when we come back with the budget from the prosecutors, we're not going to see that these employees are being absorbed in, because I'm going to support this. I've always supported this process. It's essential. But, you know, part of what we're doing is my mind as a legislative body is giving this as a sunset. And I just want to let you know this is going to be questions from me about if we're going to then absorb them into your payroll in the general fund when a lot of this has been funded with grants and temporary funding.
Yeah, there are a lot of, the answer to that is yes. That's always been the case. That's why
Okay.
I started out by saying this is a finite project. We understand that.
Okay.
And a number of the personnel that we discussed, some are from already in our office. They were investigators, 5 of them. We have the Sheriff's Department. We also have the Cleveland Police Department, BCI agents. So not all 30 members are paid for with county council money. They're paid for through the budgets of the different agencies. It's just these temporary investigators that we have that are being paid for this. Thank you very much.
Do they know that they're temporary?
Absolutely. It's in the postings,
Okay.
and we discuss it all the time.
And there's enough people out there who really are looking for these shorter term positions.
It's actually very interesting. It'll run the gamut. Some will have a lot of experience, retired Cleveland police officers, retired homicide detectives that aren't retired BCI agents, FBI agents that aren't quite ready to. Maybe they might go home, paint a few rooms, and decide they want to come back. And it's actually been very good. On the other hand, we also have some people that are breaking into the workforce that are OPATA certified and have gone through all of the police academy qualifications. So we have a nice mix, gender-wise and demographically, of the people. And it really works well. So we have a lot of experience that teaches and trains. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We still have the IT presentation, correct? So this presentation is for an item that is being requested by the prosecutor's office that's not currently in the budget.
That's correct. And very quickly, we've got Andy Moles here as the head of the IT unit at the prosecutor's office. Our capital budget in 2016 was zeroed out in the prosecutor's budget. That's typically where we go to fund any IT purchases or hardware purchases. Typically, those are the purchases that we use as the useful life of hardware begins to wear down. So we did not necessarily make any significant IT purchases in 2016. When we looked at our computer situation and our IT situation going into 2017, and obviously there'll be a transition to a new prosecutor, we were a little concerned that some of the hardware and our data storage capacity was going to be impacted because we'd gone beyond the useful life of those areas. So we're making a request of about $211,000 total. That's primarily to replace old server hardware. That's 8 years old or older. That really supports the agency's case management software utilized by the prosecutors and the attorneys to manage their cases. Increase our data storage hardware. As we go through more cases, more data storage space gets taken up. That system's been in for over 6 years. We need some capacity there. That's the second decision issue we're asking for. Disaster recovery, we do tape backups, but we're in a situation where we feel that a disaster recovery site located at the Juvenile Justice Center needs to be developed so that we've got an offline system that we can bring on whenever we get into a situation where there's a catastrophic failure. We've got some email license for software that we need to go after. Ideally, some tracking license software that allows us to ensure that if a computer is ever stolen or lost, that we can trace that. That's a relatively small item. And then the last item is to refresh our laptops. Those are hardware components that about every 3 to 5 years need to be recycled. So we've got about 1/3 of our notebooks that need to be upgraded. So ideally, we'd be in a situation where the new prosecutor would be coming in and would be able to feel comfortable that at least the fundamental hardware needs of the office are being taken care of.
Okay, any questions? Okay, hearing none. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. We'll take your recommendations under consideration.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Great, thank you. Next on the agenda is the Public Defender. Bob Tobick will present a new initiative that's in the budget. This is on page 59. And for those keeping score, this is our last presenter for the budget hearing. Could you make sure the green light's on? There you go.
What did you say, 59?
I shut it off as I moved it. Mr. Chairman, Council, I am used to being the last presenter, and so I'm going to scrap the 2.5-hour presentation that I had ready and go right to page 4 of your summary. Our full proposals are page 59 to 69 in the big budget. But the first thing we're asking for is another IT person. Right now, we have one person who's handling all the IT functions, and he's also acting as our accountant. The good news that I can bring to you is that we now have a brand-new case management system. Our old system that we've been trying to replace for a number of years crashed, and the State Defender came to our rescue. They are in the process, you've heard me say for years, the State Defender is rolling out a system. They've rolled it out in 2 counties that have 6 lawyers at the county, and then in our county. So they are helping us, but we need someone to assist to manage this new case management system, which is designed for public defenders by a public defender. So that's the first thing that we're asking for. Second thing is we're asking for 2 additional attorneys who would go to juvenile court. The juvenile court has initiated a pilot project in the custody sector to recover some of the costs that are attendant upon when the state or some agency gets custody of the children. So you have a letter from the presiding judge, Kristen Sweeney, at juvenile court requesting that you fund us for 2 attorneys to do this function. The last thing is an expungement clerk. During this year, there was an initiative started by Judge Shannon Gallagher, who set up some forums out in the community about expungement. And we had been doing it on a as people walk in basis, and we had people working on it in generally. These community fact-finding and explanatory events generated much more people than we thought were out there. They had one in Collinwood, had 450 people attend. One that was, I think in the 3rd district, had 250. And the result is that since we started, we had added an expungement clerk to handle the basic processing. Since we've added them, we've had 2,000 people show up to see if they could get their records sealed. I think we've been successful in about 500. Historically, we're running about 50. We have a letter of support from the presiding judge, Judge John Russo, and from Judge Shannon Gallagher, asking that we be funded for another expungement clerk to help screen these people, to help determine whether they're eligible in the first place, and to see if they cannot afford to help them prepare the affidavit of indigency. And the last item we have is a salary parity issue that the revised code and the county policies should have. There should be parity between the prosecutor's salaries and the public defender's salaries. So we have 2 investigators that match the qualifications of the investigators in the prosecutor's office, and we're asking for funding for that.
Any questions? Ms. Simon, Ms. Conwell?
Did your public defenders have laptops to take with them to court?
We do.
Do
We're
they
due
need-
for replacement, however. I heard the 3 to 5 year.
Yeah, that's what I'm
figure, and,
asking.
I believe we have that in the budget already.
Okay, so you're on par with the technology?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, we want to make sure that the prosecutor's office and the public defender's office have parity with regard to their technology and capability when they're in court.
We've asked for laptops that will be compatible or supportive of the state system. So the state defender has told us what they need, and we've put the request in for that in the budget, which I believe is not a question.
If I could just interject and remind council that some of these items being requested are subject to a 46% reimbursement from the state.
That's correct. We're one of the few money-generating county agencies.
Were you, Mr. Tobick, were you one of the public defender's office what were you cut in the last budget? Were you cut anything, 10%?
No, we were not cut 10%.
Okay. So this is not something to kind of bring you back?
No, these are new initiatives that
Okay.
turns out there's a demand for these services. You know, the two lawyers in juvenile, that's a whole new initiative, and the expungement has been wildly successful.
And we missed you this morning.
We were at the rollout of the Arnold Foundation bail project in Cleveland Muni, which I think is going to be expanded to the county.
Any other questions? Mr. Germana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see you have these special investigators to have parity.
Yes.
Is the rest of your attorneys have parity with the prosecutor's office?
Well, I think it depends on whose perspective you're looking for. However, we just completed the intensive labor negotiations, and so one of the issues is maintaining parity between the public defender attorneys and the prosecutors, and we have resolved that issue, and so we have, according to the contract negotiations, parity with the prosecutor.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear that.
Okay, great. Any other questions? All right, hearing none, thank you. We'll take your items under consideration. This concludes this portion of the committee meeting. I want to remind my colleagues that we'll be back next Tuesday at Committee of the Whole to entertain further action. I'd encourage everyone to meet with council staff over the next week if they have any questions or recommendations or amendments to the resolution presented by the administration. The next item on the agenda, I'll go ahead and just read a preface or discuss a preface on this. This will be an item for Metro Health. It is only their operating budget. This is not their transformation plan. It's not the capital budget. And I'd like us to focus our questions, if we have any, on merely the operating budget of Metro Health. But before we begin, clerk will please read the item into the record.
Resolution number 2016-0203, approving the Metro Health System year 2017 budget in accordance with Ohio Revised Code Section 339.06D, with the understanding that the allocation of county funds to the system will be made through adoption of the 2016-2017 biennial operating budget and capital improvements program annual update for 2017.
Go ahead, please begin. Just push the push button.
There we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Council President Brady, and also members of council. My name is Craig Richmond. I am the Chief Financial Officer of the Metro Health System, and it's my privilege to be here this year to present our 2017 operating budget. You have been provided with copies of my presentation as well as Metro Health System's 2015 Community Benefit Report. So I'd like to start with just talking a little bit about where Metro Health has been and where we're going. We have been expanding our reach to serve Cuyahoga County. And what this picture demonstrates right here is where Metro Health is located within Cuyahoga County. And over the past several years, I would say over the past 3.5 years, we have added 10 new locations and also started providing care at more than 20 facilities. So for example, we have opened up our Brecksville Medical Office. We've opened our Cleveland Heights medical offices. We've opened Parma medical offices and surgery center, Bedford medical office, as well as Lyndhurst and many others.
What I just wanted to demonstrate here is, as you can see, based on how many folks that we've been touching as it relates to our care. So we've had significant growth as it relates to our outpatient visits from 2011. We have approximately about an 8% CAGR, which is compound annual growth rate over those years. And you can see we're projecting in 2016 to almost have 1.2 million outpatient visits. These outpatient visits do not include the emergency department visits, and our emergency department visits are approximately around 125,000 emergency department visits. Now, with these increases, with the increase in the number of services and visits that we provide, you can also see that we have been committed as it relates to our hiring diversity. So this just shares with our 2015 results, and one of the things that has very much been a focus, inclusion and diversity is one of our system values. And in 2015, 69% of our managers and our physicians hired represented racial, ethnic, and/or gender diversity. Also, as it relates to our nursing professionals, 32% of our nursing professionals that were hired within 2015 also represented racial, ethnic, and/or gender diversity. So, partnering for a healthier community, if you would, turn to page 6. What I just wanted to highlight is some of the organizations that we have been partnering with over the past year. First, we're a member of the Advanced Health Select Network. This is a clinically integrated network. This is with Mercy Health and also Summa Health. And the purpose of this collaboration, or being a member of this clinically integrated network, is really to share best practices. It's to focus on improving quality, focus on improving access, as well as chronic care management. Also, we have partnered with Drug Mart in order to be at various retail pharmacy clinics. As we all know, when we need care, we want the care, and we want to have access that is convenient to each and every one of us. So currently today, we are at 4 walk-in clinics as it relates to Drug Mart. Also, back in 2015, we announced or launched the largest Medicaid population health agreement in Ohio with CareSource. And then lastly, in the past several months, we introduced a new HMO insurance product with MMO called CleCare. And the purpose here is you have a provider as well as a health insurer that are collaborating together with a new value proposition, and that is better care with a better experience at a better cost. So just wanted to highlight who we're collaborating with in the local markets. If you move on to the next page, continuing the theme of partnering for a healthier community, we're pleased to report that in 2015 that our community benefit was $223 million. This $223 million is $223 million at cost. And what this is a portion of our operating expenses that go back into the community. Also, what I just wanted to highlight is that the Metro Health system, approximately 24.6% of our operating costs are represented by this community benefit number. Also, the U.S. hospital national average is approximately about 8.9%. Also, we're very gracious for the support that we get from Cuyahoga County of the $32.4 million that supports the patient care needs of those unable to afford health care. I don't know if I've ever had an opportunity to share this slide before, but what this slide just demonstrates is here we have our county, and each and every one of these individual dots represent a patient encounter, or an encounter is also known as a patient visit. So there's approximately 80,000 plus dots that are on this one page right here. And what this represents is not where the patient got care, it represents where the patient is coming from. So just wanted to share for a second, this represents the uninsured patient population, or the visits from the uninsured patient population within our county. And what I can report as of 2016 year to date, so this would be through the October timeframe, currently right now we're at about 81,000 patient encounters, or uninsured patient encounters. So my estimate or my projection is that we'll be close to about 96,000 by the end of the year. So moving forward with our 2017 operating budget, here's just some strategic themes that's driving our budget. And I would say this is not just the strategic themes for 2017. These really are strategic themes for 2017 and for future years. So first, we will continue to focus on wellness and prevention. As our chief medical officer said to me one day, Craig, we spent a lot of time treating disease versus preventing disease. So how do we continue to keep the population that we care for healthy and also intervene before they're at their sickest? Also, what we have done is we continue to focus on our population healthcare delivery model. Recently, we hired a senior vice president of population to continue to lead that charge of what we've been doing successfully for many years. Also, we're very focused on increasing the satisfaction of both patients and their families by providing patient-centered care. So we're focused on access when you need it, clinical quality, service experience, and also improving the cost of healthcare delivery. Improving access, so that's one of the biggest things that I'm sure you hear a lot about across the healthcare industry. Continue to improve access. How do we continue to improve access? Well, it's through our network expansion, it's through our partnerships, and also through our regional collaboration. We're going to continue to focus on delivering high-value services and continue to focus on providing those high-value services at the lowest cost possible. We've been very successful, but we still have a lot of opportunity to further reduce the cost associated with providing healthcare delivery. We've also been spending a lot of time in implementing technology. It's great to implement the technology, but you need to truly leverage it in order to improve efficiency and margin maximization. So we have new tools, we have new analytics, but that's great that you have a lot of data. We need to continue to take the data, convert it to information, convert the information to knowledge, and ultimately convert it to wisdom. So that's great that you can report. Reporting is a historical look back. We need to be focused on the future, which is more predictive analytics. Also, we're going to continue to focus on implementing at-risk revenue models, which truly, I believe, rewards us for our clinically effective and cost-efficient care model. Back in 2013, we had our Care Plus program. We were the only provider in this state that participated in this Medicaid expansion pilot. What that pilot demonstrated is that our costs were 28.7% lower and more than 41% less than allowable under the contract with CMS. So what that showed is that we can provide high-quality care at a more affordable cost and also have superior clinical outcomes that come from it. So here are some of the 2017 operating budget constructs. Our adjusted operating income target is $15.5 million for 2017. That equates to about a 1.3% operating margin. Our adjusted operating cash flow target is $68 million. That's also known as EBITDA, earnings before interest, depreciation, and amortization. We're going to have modest market share growth from our new locations, programs, and partnerships. Also, we're in our second year of our service line structure. Our service line structure was a patient-centered organizational model that we have implemented. Each service line has what we call a dyad leadership model. You have a clinical leader as well as an administrative leader. And the purpose here is to basically provide organizational, strategic, operational, and financial alignment in the best way that we can in servicing our patient population. Also, we have modest managed care payment increases for the services that we provide, and also value-based payment streams coming into the system as well. And then lastly, we are very focused on transformational. And I use the word transformational because it's how can we continue to manage our costs within both labor and non-labor, but it can't be in the same way that we've done in the past. How do we continue to operate, as we say with clinicians, how do clinicians continue to operate at the top of their license, but also how do all the administrative or non-clinical professionals operate at the top of their game? Here is just a snapshot of the overall profit and loss statement with the various statistic indicators. If you just look at the one column that has the dotted bar line around it, you can see that that's the $15.5 million that I referenced on the prior slide. And then down below are just some highlights as it relates to the different volume indicators between discharges are your inpatient. You have your observation cases, which means we're monitoring them when they didn't meet the medical criteria to implement them to an inpatient status, and so forth. Also, what I wanted to highlight on this slide, as you can see, this is just a multi-year look at Metro Health's total operating revenues and also operating income. It's been pretty remarkable growth over the many years. And then what I have below it is just to give you a feel for what's really driven some of the overall total operating revenue growth. So starting in 2011 to 12, we began with market growth. Then we had our Medicaid waiver, so that was the Medicaid demonstration pilot that I mentioned in 2013. In 2013 through 2014, actually it continued over the next 3 years. We renegotiated our managed care contracts, which allowed for additional reimbursement to come into the system for the care that we were providing. Also, we had the recent integration of the health plan facilities in this past year with many of the health plan physicians. And then lastly, in 2017, what we will continue to work on is maturing, the maturation of those sites over the next year and years to come. And then if you see down below, well, what I should mention is, with the total operating revenue, obviously there was significant increase in cost to provide the patient care as well. And that's reflected in our adjusted operating income down below. So if you look at from 2011 to 2014, our operating income increased, obviously, because of the managed care contracts and the opening of new facilities. In 2014, our Middleburg Heights facility opened up. We used to just have a Strongsville facility out there, which was basically just primary medicine. Now, obviously, we provide a lot of primary specialty and other diagnostic-related services. And then you can see in 2014 down to 2015, the difference between there is we began to see various type of reductions in payment. So we had reductions in payment as it relates to the expiration of the Affordable Care Act, Medicaid primary care payment parity program. So that was about $10 million. Also, even though we were getting additional reimbursement as it relates to Medicaid, there was a significant reduction that we've seen over the years as it relates to our disproportionate share payments and so forth. Then that takes us into 2016 at an adjusted operating income of $14.3 million. I will say 2016 has been a year of investment. And what I mean by a year of investment, we had an amazing opportunity to embrace the integration of the new health span sites, and that is starting to prove to be, very successful for the residents of Cuyahoga County. And then in 2017, the last you can see, that's where we are projecting a $15.5 million budget. If you will, on the next slide, just to continue with some overall financial indicators, we have our adjusted operating cash flow. You can see over time, from 2011 through 2017, we've been relatively pretty steady as it relates to our adjusted operating cash flow. And then lastly, our total cash and investments, you can see that we have really maintained around the $400 million mark. In 2016, you can see from 2015 to 2016, it was a reduction of about $50 million. We recently opened up our critical care pavilion, and the critical care pavilion was approximately an $85 million project that was on time, on target, on budget. So that's why you see a $50 million dip from one year over the other. So that concludes my presentation, and I'll entertain questions, please.
Any questions? Yes. Mr. Miller.
Of the $224 million in community benefit, how much of that is uncompensated care, and how much is that of other things, and what are some of the other things?
Of the $223 million, I want to say approximately $50 million is the financial assistance or the uncompensated care. Approximately another $100 million is associated with Medicaid shortfall. And then the other related items is to cover training programs, advanced public health programs, other life-saving services. So for example, we have costs in there associated with the medical home for children in foster care, our Ebola Preparedness Center. We're the only Ebola center in the state of Ohio, our Tuberculosis Treatment Center, and Project Dawn. But the lion's share of the cost is for Medicaid shortfall as well as uncompensated care.
And in the budget summary, there's a 12.342 million non-recurring item in 2016. What's that for?
That dollar represents the non-reoccurring investment and expenses associated with the health span integration.
And finally, what is your assessment of the potential impact if the Affordable Care Act does not continue?
Well, being that the election now is 4 weeks past, what we continue to do is we are actually, doing a lot of analysis. We're working with a lot of external parties. Actually, next week, Dr. Boutros and myself will be heading to Columbus to meet with the director of Medicaid. So, with that said, I would say there's a lot of unknowns. What we will do is Metro Health has been able to survive and thrive, and a lot of other healthcare reform changes over the years. And with that said, we will figure out a way as it relates to whatever policy changes are forthcoming, how to be adaptive and agile to embrace those changes. But with that said, we also will be very vocal and very vocal and involved as to what takes place at the state and federal level to protect all of our interests.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Sharon.
And I realize we're staying on just the operating current budget issues, but the word metro for me seems to have a root in the word metropolitan as opposed to regional. But it looks like your operating budget has gone more regional, based on Middleburg Heights and Strongsville and Brecksville and things of that nature. So is metropolitan now defined as countywide, all the way to the edges of the county?
I would say for as long as I've been with the system, and I've been with the system for approximately 7 years, the way that I've always seen Metro Health, it's covered all residents of Cuyahoga County. So I would say it covers all areas within the county. And I'm not quite sure if I'm exactly addressing your question, but if we go back and we just look at Slide
8 was 10 years ago. Would it look like Slide 8?
I'm sorry, sir?
Your splatter dot. Your
Yes.
splatter. Would it look like that 10 years ago, 20 years ago?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Could you find out?
I could.
Because it seems to me that we're being asked to do operational expense with what we're talking about here, and this looks like it's transformational. So that's why I'd love to hear what's going on if that's what we're doing differently, because it looks that way to me. Are any dots, even though this is strictly within the county, are there any dots that actually have been serviced outside the county?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can we see that map too?
Sure.
So that means we're servicing people from Lorain County, maybe from Geauga County, from Lake County, things of that nature with this splatter map then too.
Well, so this represents, I would say, the county-supported care within Cuyahoga County. So the $32.4 million that we receive, that $32.4 million provides for the patient care within Cuyahoga County, not outside the county.
But you're not going to try and tell this body that dollars are not fungible, I assume.
I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying, just from
dollars are dollars. From that standpoint. Okay, well, and the CEO came before this body, I think a little over 2 years plus ago, and said that by 2017 you would not be coming here asking for this funds. At least that's what I recall. Any thoughts in regards to that statement?
I would say that things have changed since that statement has been made in 2013. And for example, as it relates to the other trauma system that has opened up within town, what we did budget and what we did present last year is we showed that we had a $20 million net revenue reduction, or we were projecting a $20 million net revenue reduction as it relates to trauma. I will tell you that $20 million is almost going to be close to $35 million.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
To follow up on Jack's question, would those dots outside of the county, would they represent insured customers as opposed to uninsured?
Find out when we get the dots.
Yeah, let me just get to the slide. So as it relates to slide 8, this just represents uninsured, okay? Obviously, then if you layer in the insured, okay, so this represents those that do not have any insurance. So if you then layered in commercial, Medicare, Medicaid, yes, you'll have coverage on this slide as well. But then also as it relates to if you're saying, outside the county, yes, you'll have dots of the uninsured that come from outside the county, as well as you'll have dots that are coming in from outside the county that are both commercial, Medicare, and also Medicaid.
Another question, there are obviously affluent residents of our county on the west side of this county and on the east side of the county, but you don't see as many pins on the east side of the county. Is there any reason why there's less service on the, right?
I would say no, there's not any reason, obviously. We've as it relates to Metro Health has always been, we'll provide care with an individual's ability to pay or not. So where anybody comes from within the county. Also, when people come to Metro Health, we take them through I will say a financial assistance process. So maybe they didn't know that they would be eligible for insurance. So what we do work with them to do is to exhaust all options to see if we can get them on Medicaid. Maybe they were eligible for Medicare. And I'll tell you a quick story. We have an outreach unit. It's a mobile RV. It's, I don't know if you've all seen it. And within that mobile unit, the reason it's called an outreach unit is really it's an educational vehicle. It goes to different locations, different places. And I would say a lot of the people that come on that van are seeking to get help with understanding the difference between Medicare Part A, B, and D, because they have difficulties in understanding what Medicare provides. So every patient that comes, we try to see what type of financial assistance is available. And even if there is no insurance that they would be eligible for, obviously we provide care for them underneath our financial assistance program.
My last question, on your inclusion chart, you mentioned that there's 69% of the managers and physicians hired. Can you also maybe in the future provide a chart of those top 100 to 200 decision makers within the hospital, what the inclusion, what the diversity looks like in the decision-making level of the hospital?
Absolutely. And Councilman, we're more than happy to meet with you or whomever to take you through all that data and share with you that information as to who the decision makers are.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Mr. Germana.
Hey, just as a closing segment to this, I can testify that I had the need to go to an emergency room for a diagnostic procedure, and I chose the Metro Health on Snow Road, and it was an excellent experience, for the record, and it was paid for.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Any further questions? All right, hearing none. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. This is an item that we should move out for second reading, adoption under suspension of the rules for the December 13th meeting. Is there a motion? Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. I'm going to turn the chair back over to the president for the conclusion of our meeting.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for your participation today. I know it's been a long day. A lot of stuff to try to take in. Under 5 miscellaneous business, all I want to do is raise everybody's expectations that they're going to be getting communication from the council office, probably on a daily basis between now and next Tuesday. We're looking for opportunities to have people come in when they can in small groups to go over the budget update pretty much line by line, and the staff is completely prepared, to do that. there's a whole history to this we also want to share with people because this process didn't start today. So that for those who are interested, which I assume are most people, that to be part of the decision-making here about what we spend and what we don't spend, and what we decide are our what we want on this agenda that maybe isn't on the administration's agenda, or what we may decide that's on the administration's agenda that we don't believe at this time we want to fund, and look for that consensus. So I just want to warn you ahead of time, be looking